Meeting of November 20th, 2024. If you could all join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As many of you probably saw, the CHS student report is being rescheduled, so that is not going to be an agenda item for tonight. We are on to public comments. Before we get started, there's obviously a lot of new faces here. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming to the school board meeting tonight. I did just want to review briefly some parts of the public comment policy in case people aren't aware. Every commenter has 3 minutes. There are 2 different slots for public comments. So you can speak for 3 minutes at both the first and the second slot if you'd like. This is an opportunity to provide comments to the board. It's unfortunately not a question and answer session, and it's not a back and forth discussion. Each speaker must identify themselves for the record in 4 minutes. Speakers should not include names of students or staff in their comments. Defamatory statements, foul language, and raised voices will not be tolerated. All comments should be directed to the chair, and any meeting disruptions may result in ejection from the meeting after 2 warnings. I trust we'll all act like adults. I'm not worried about it, but I welcome up the first public speaker.
Yes, we're back. Hi, I'm Bobby Anadofsky. I'm from 5 Brown Road. I know that all of you received the email that I sent on November 14th at approximately 7:14 a.m. I CC'd Miss Withy and a teacher in concerns to a topic about softcore pornography books being lent to my son from his teacher's personal library. I hope that you include my original email, maybe black out the teacher's name if she gets iffy, and include the photos that were sent in the meeting minutes, please. My son just turned 12 in September. It's extremely inappropriate that an adult who is trusted to educate children with a set curriculum would give a minor a book of this nature. I do have them here, so I'm going to give them to you because I don't honestly want them back in the library. I am extremely open with concerns to sexuality. My kids know they can come to me with anything. It's not the fact that he's looking at these books, it's that a teacher that we trust gave them to him. It's really disturbing that an adult gave my son a book. For example, in the book, there's a boyish character, and he does look like a boy, and the adult woman says to grope her all over, and then she sticks his face in her chest, breast area, and says, "Now we can make babies." And there's lots of pretty pictures you can look at in there. Kids are curious. I totally get it. And like with internet and everything, I'm not saying he doesn't look at that stuff or whatever. For example, I used to sell adult home novelties. If I was to sell to a minor, even if it was softcore, even if it was a coupon book for whatever XYZ, I could be fired, I could get a fine, and I could be arrested. So I'm just saying, it doesn't matter if it's softcore, if it's a minor, I don't want it messing around with my kid with this content. When I did email, all I received back was, it was an accident. And sorry, actually, it didn't even say sorry. It was just said, it was an accident. Accidents like this should not happen. It's not an option in a public school. You approve the curriculum. That's not in the curriculum. So I don't want an adult giving any student, not just my son, but this is a shared elementary and middle school. If that were to get in the hands of even younger student, it could really mess them up. I don't think that should be here. I am friends with a lot of paras in other districts, and one of the paras said, "I can't believe that happened. I have to go through my teacher's, her main room that she's in. She does travel, but the main room she's in, she goes through the books. I'm going to finish my comment. I'm going to finish this." So she goes through a para. She is assigned to go through the books twice a year. and then she has to catalog all the books that are in the private library of the teacher. I don't know why that's not being done here yet, because the paras are a great resource we could use if they have time. I know they're assigned to certain students. I don't understand why this was dubbed an accident. Look at this cover. That's an accident that was in the library. And I, after posting this on our Deerfield group to be like, hey, just a heads up, this is even happening in Deerfield. Like, take a look out. 2 different families came to me when they asked their high schooler, did you see anything like that? They're like, oh yeah, all the kids talk about it. Go to that classroom and you can get other books too, not just this one. So if high schoolers, that means that these books have been in that class, not just this one, but other ones like it have been in that classroom for over 3 years. 3 groups of students. How is that an accident? That's an accident? So, there's a lot of weirdness going on. I just hope that your policies need to be reviewed. I hope that there are responsible people in your school that are, designated to doing this. And I think that we need to do better as Deerfield and as the United States, and we need to do better and let the kids just be kids. I don't think adults should be involved in their sexuality. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg Whitmore, North Road. Start out with something positive here. So looking at the current high school enrollment for the 8th grade class, 31 have chosen Co-Brown, 23 Concord High School, 1 Pembroke Academy. It's clear school choice is working. The desire for choice was there and people are taking advantage of it. Excellent. Moving on to other things. I fully support Bobby Ann's concerns regarding this book. I mean, the cover alone never should have made it past an adult. It's ridiculous that it did. I teach 18-year-olds, and I cannot imagine having this book in my classroom and a kid walking up to my bookshelf and pulling it up and say, Mr. Whitmore, what is this book? What is going on here? I would be mortified personally teaching legal adults. All right, so I don't know how this got by, but this can't happen again. I think the school board should put out a formal statement to parents, and I want assurance that something like this is not going to happen again. Another topic. There was a recent NHPR interview featuring a quote from one of our school board members, and I quote, "It is incredibly hard just getting people to agree that special education is important, not even so much that we are mandated to provide it, but that as a community, this should be a priority." I mean, you don't want to talk about offensive. Does the entire school board agree with this statement? Because if you don't, this is being reflected on the rest of you. All right? It's offensive. It makes it look like this town is hostile towards special ed. We need to do better than this. Right? Special ed is clearly funding is clearly mandated by law. There's no wiggle room around it. So why this would even be put out there, I can't imagine. But please do better in the future. Last thing, I emailed a comparison of the unified arts classes for SAU 53 and 5 other towns. And if I apologize for sending multiple emails, but information came in. Strangely enough, I was waiting for SAU 53 information to come in, and it finally did this afternoon. If you look at the comparisons, DCS is the only school with 2 PE, 2 art, and 2 music teachers. Every other school has 1 teacher in these positions, or even part-time, with the exception being Auburn, who has a 1.5 art teachers. If we take in student population comparisons, DCS, I had a number of 485. I assume it's relatively close at this point. Nottingham, 502. Auburn, 687. And they're getting by with 1 of each of these. I'd really like you to take a look. I mean, we're desperate for space, right? We want to get kids out of the portables and into the buildings. Can we condense these things? Really take a look at what other towns are doing. The information that was provided to you not only tells you the number of individuals in these positions, but how they're actually running these specials, how often they are offered, and what the kids are actually getting out of it. Right? It's a lot of good stuff. I'd love to see a discussion about it in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. Leah McHugh, Harvey Road.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I touch on the quote that our school board chair made to NHPR. You started off by saying you recalled how difficult it was to pass the budget last year due to the $1.2 million increase in the special education costs. We, in fact, supported a $77,000 overage on the default budget last year, which was higher than our proposed budget. It completely misrepresented our town. I'm not sure how we can build trust between our town and this school district if we continue on like this. This was a publication that didn't need to happen. We're politically motivated at this point to standing behind the state not giving us enough funds. Your business administrator gave you a breakdown in tonight's budget packet that shows that in 3 different areas from our state sources, we are going to have an increase estimated. You are reducing state COVID-related funds. These are funds that would have dried up anyways and that we need to adequately prepare for. I would suggest that adding more money to our special education trust fund be done, as it should every single year, to help cover these costs. But saying that the town does not support these special education funds is just blatantly not true. Your federal program grants are diminishing. And again, that is due to COVID funds diminishing. We're no longer in a state of emergency. Gaps in learning, we should have caught up already. We have to be able to adjust back now. Thank you. Oh, I should also note, the inappropriate content found in the 7th grade classroom, not only was the school obligated to maybe notify parents, nothing was sent out. Nothing was sent out to say that this incident occurred, how we are going to handle the incident moving forward, if any policy changes are coming about. So I'd like to hear that discussion take place. Thanks.
Thank you.
Kevin Virgo, McCarran Road. We should always be protecting minors from age inappropriate material. And that is not book banning, it's being responsible adults. That whole thing is just horrifying. The reason I'm here tonight is to ask the chair of the Deerfield School Board to step down. And if she refuses to step down as chair, then I'm going to ask that the board call a vote of no confidence and elect a new chair to your board. The chair of the Deerfield School Board made false statements in New Hampshire Public Radio in characterizing our budget process last year. Every year we have a lot of discussion around budgets. Last year, the big fight was over a school bus for high school students, right? The majority of the board tried to remove funding for one high school bus, and the people of Deerfield wanted it in. And so they passed the default budget, which was larger than the proposed budget. And the numbers that it passed by more than 12 point spread. It was like 56 to 44. There was no difficulty passing that budget. That default budget flew through, which gives you your requested budget, because it's a bottom line budget. So you got more money. So you can't say, well, the money was in lines we didn't like, because you have the freedom to move that. And then the chair went on to disparage the citizens of Deerfield, stating that we have trouble getting people to agree that high quality education, high quality special education is important in Deerfield. So I'm not aware of everything, but I have never heard anybody make remarks that even approaches what the chair was quoted as saying to New Hampshire Public Radio. Right? That is just such a mischaracterization of the people that you're elected to represent. And for that reason, this board should have no confidence in their chair. And if the chair doesn't voluntarily step down, then the board should have a vote of no confidence and elect a new chair. The public trust is of critical importance. And of all the public trusts that there is none that is not more critically important than public education. This is where people are sending their children for 180 days a year. And they want to know that the people that are running that school, the executive board, because that's essentially what a school board is, the executive board of this school district, that they are speaking truthfully, they're speaking factually, they're representing the community in a true and correct way. And so for that, I would ask you to step down as chair, not to leave the board, but to step down as chair. And if she doesn't do it, then you should elect a new chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Next comment?
Good evening. Stacy Marchioni, Meeting House Hill Road in Deerfield. I'm here tonight to talk about parents' rights. At the October 16th school board meeting, I came here and requested that you change your vote on New Hampshire School Board Association proposed resolution 24, which is a policy to lobby the New Hampshire State Legislature to oppose any laws that would require teachers report to parents conversations they have with a student regarding the student's status as a member of any protected class, among which is gender identity. This is a direct response to parents demanding to be informed if their child is interested in changing their name, pronouns, or gender identity while at school. The rationale given for opposition to parents' rights legislation: mandatory reporting of non-criminal issues is an affront to professional ethics, among other things. I ask you today, what role did professional ethics play in having a pornographic book in a 7th grade classroom? Professional ethics did not stop a teacher from distributing the book, one which is tantamount to child porn, as it includes images of naked 12-year-old kids. I would also note that you have a student conduct policy that requests students display exemplary personal standards of courtesy, decency, honesty, and wholesome attitudes. Tell me how that book could be called wholesome. How are you going to demand less of your teachers than you do of your students? I will say it again, it's toxic to allow adults to keep secrets with students from their parents. It is not professional, it is not ethical, and it is an affront to parents and their inherent rights to guide and teach their children, rights which supersede those of any teacher. It is the first step in grooming behavior. A professional ethics code will not prevent unethical teachers from using the opportunity to keep secrets with a student from harassing or sexually abusing students. This is not just about gender identity issues. It's about setting a precedent where you allow opportunities for abuse of children. For example, this week, a teacher in Manchester was arrested for enticing a minor into a sex trafficking ring. Just yesterday, John Van Patten was sentenced to 10 to 15 years in prison for repeatedly sexually abusing a student while employed as a special ed teacher at Concord Academy. On August 31st, former Bedford substitute teacher Jonathan Harrison was arrested and charged with possession of child sex abuse images. In February, former Concord teacher Joshua Harwood was charged with sex crimes. In January of last year, Mr. Shane, 32, a former paraprofessional and JV baseball coach, was arrested on charges of aggravated sexual assault and felonious sexual assault of a 15-year-old girl. And I could go on and on and on. And I know you've seen these reports in the news. This is not in any way an indictment of the teaching profession. You have amazing teachers and professionals who are in here every day doing fabulous work with kids. However, you have to acknowledge that a code of conduct is not going to stop any adult from abusing a minor. And that includes teachers. It is wrong. A policy that allows them to keep secrets from parents is one that is ripe for abuse. You have to acknowledge that parents have the right to be kept apprised of what is happening with their kids in the 40 hours that they sit in this building with other adults. I ask you to disavow your vote on the proposed school board resolution and instead to vow to support legislation which requires mandatory reporting on matters regarding children in protected classes, and to please keep pornographic books out of a school. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comments?
GG Clip 19 Candy Road, and I want to just address a few things. One, I didn't see the cover of the book, so thank you for bringing the book. I am not here to defend. I think everybody can agree when we look at the book, we might go, ooh. But immediately when I had heard what happened, because I stay away from social media, I then went to try to find out, and I felt like I understood what happened. Classroom teachers have hundreds of books that they are trying to keep in a classroom library to encourage kids with hundreds of different interests to read. I'm not saying that this book was the one that was there. What I'm saying is the teacher, I thought in my mind, this teacher probably read 3 graphic novels in this series. Then she went and read the reviews about the series. Then she said, I'm going to order that series because those reviews are there. And I'm not saying it's an appropriate practice, but I'm saying I understood how it happened. And if any one of us had made a mistake, if I make a mistake at work, when I make a mistake, what I would hope is that I wouldn't want to be, if I work for a company, the first place I don't know that I would like run to the CEO of the company and simultaneously post a letter on Facebook to disparage the work that I've done because I made a mistake. I made a mistake.
You're attacking a member of the town right now. She's attacking the town.
It's okay. I would have got fired in my other job
This
if I
shouldn't
did
be
this.
allowed.
I think that could you add some time, please? Because I'd like to go a little further and just go on to say that I also read the article in the NPR. I looked at the comments that the school board chair made, and I did not take those comments. In fact, as a former school board member, as the assistant principal in this town prior, I have had hundreds of conversations with people that have not understood the importance of special education. I didn't disparage them. I didn't think, it was just simply they didn't understand how the process worked. They didn't understand that there were state regulations. They didn't understand. I spoke with a woman in the car tonight that I gave a ride home, who's a member of this town, who said to me, I had no idea that is how it worked. And I had no idea that how it was funded. Hundreds of conversations. And at the end of the article, even the Commissioner of Education alluded to the fact that he did not believe that special education was important. Because he said that when kids leave the public school system and use their vouchers, they no longer need special education. So I didn't understand that, but what I really want to get to, and this is going to be hard for me, is what the underlies all of this. This is what I want to get to, and I'm going to face, and I'm going to look, because
You're supposed to address
Oh,
the
all
chair.
right, I broke the protocol. But what I do want to say to everybody is, I don't know how we got here. I don't understand how we got here. I don't understand. What it seems like to me is that there is just the desire to want to say gotcha and have lack of trust. And I am not asking a rhetorical question. I honestly want to understand. I have been in this town for 37 years, and I have never, ever felt like I feel in the town now, because I never felt like I was going to be judged as a human being because of a value system that I have about how I think maybe education should happen or politics. That's never been the case. And I would I'll go for tea. I'll buy the tea. I'll buy the coffee. I'll buy a beer. I'll go out with whoever wants to go, and please someone help me understand not only how did we get here so that we cannot trust each other in this town constantly, that we walk down our streets looking at people thinking, oh, whose side are they on? What flag are they flying? What sign is in their yard? How did we get here? And the more important question is, and it's not rhetorical, I want someone to help me. How do we get out of this? Because living like this, is this how we want to live? Is this it? Is this the way we want to go on for ad infinitum? Is this it? I don't know. I don't think so. It's not how I want to go. And what's really sad to me is an awful example for our children. It's awful. And I'm open to anybody that can help me understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comments? Okay, we will move on. I will not be stepping down, so unless someone wants to make a motion, I will continue on with the agenda. Agenda review. Review of correspondence, I don't think we actually have until the next business meeting.
Yes.
So that's an error. We are not reviewing correspondence, we didn't put any in the drive. That's typically done at the first business meeting of the month, which is December 4th. Okay. Then we will be going through the capital improvement projects, the budget, any ideas for draft warrant articles, space needs. We do need a non-public session this evening. And that is it. Any informational items?
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, I have something just to hand out from program.
do you want to do that in informational?
Well, yeah.
All right, great. So we'll move on to the capital improvement project.
Chris is with us. We did a little draft or spreadsheet for you to review his capital improvement plan for the next 8 years, 9 years. And then there are some question marks on here and some input from the board that Chris will need regarding which years you want to fund things, how much you want to put away each year. And he'll go over the bottom one is a pretty costly item that we are looking for board input too. So if you have questions to start, Chris will walk you through.
Please. Thank you for joining us, Chris.
The exhaust fans are done. Oh, what? The exhaust fans are done, aren't they? First one.
Yes, 2024 exhaust fans are done, stack replacement's done. What else did we accomplish last year?
Fire alarm.
Fire alarm. Yeah, we're still in the process of the final request from Deerfield Fire Department, which will take place over the summer. We're obtaining pricing from RB Lewis for approval from the school board on that. And then after July 1, we'll move forward with that. So, we do have one replacement that's gonna come sooner than later. The evaporator coil on the freezer in the kitchen is leaking, and the evaporator is basically like like the coolant runs through in your car, has all the little wafers and copper tubing. You can't just go in there and start digging around, you're gonna cause more damage and waste more money. So I'm currently getting 3 bids for that replacement. Estimated cost right now is at $7,000 to have that replaced.
And that's just the coil, not the full freezer?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. All indications say it's an original piece of equipment, so we.
To the school?
In the
Original to
freezer,
the school.
yeah, so it's 30 plus years. We got our life out of it. It's one of those things that you don't want to just say, hey, let's replace this for replacing it. So you kind of,
How large is this freezer?
what's that?
How large is it?
The freezer is probably 6 by 4. One of two, you have 2 freezers and 1 walk-in refrigerator. It's a walk-in freezer.
So replacing the coil, we wouldn't expect to have to do anything for quite a while.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that at all. We have chased quite a bit of leaks in the line that go between the evaporator in the freezer, in the condenser outside. All indications as of right now, it's good. Once again, it's just one of those things we hope fail in the summer, not during the school season, but the kitchen's been working really hard to do everything they need to, make accommodations to keep everything the way it should. So, yeah, we're looking at an old building, old equipment,
Yeah.
30 plus years old, so
And are we routinely checking the temperature of the freezer?
The kitchen, yes, they do daily. I think they're required 3 times a day by the health department to check freezer.
It's not working at all though. It's completely,
Yeah, it's completely
Out of
shut.
commission.
Yeah, it's dead right now, and so all of their stuff has been moved into the second freezer.
which is packed.
So
I don't know
once,
if it's,
just so you know, once we get the 3 quotes, Chris is gonna move ahead with the repair. So anytime there's an emergency like this and something is shut down, we don't wait for board meetings and we don't, we wanna make sure you know that that's a very expensive item, but we have to have our freezer back in place, and Gail's been packing and packing and packing, and every time our delivery comes, it's a huge issue. So, but as soon as we get the quotes and get someone scheduled, if it doesn't happen to fall on a board meeting week, we'll probably just move ahead with that. So,
Okay, for this summer, another big item in the school is the air unit ventilators, which if you see outside the building, we have little grates on the exterior. Those are what bring in the fresh air into the building, whether it's for just air circulation or cooling, as much as it can cool. 30 years old again. The only thing we've updated on those were the software package. So nothing really major. Right now, we're currently running into, with the air handling units, miswiring of the actuators, which allow the hot and cold water to be released, whether it's calling for hot or cold. Louvers, which control the airflow. And the motherboard or the main board in there. The units are just so old that they don't make those boards anymore. So some units have been running constantly for who knows how long. So it's just time to update them into a more energy efficient unit. So this year I'd like to put out, or sooner than later, I'd like to put out an RFP to solicit engineers to look at our building, come up with their pricing for creating a scope of works, which would include the entire process, what equipment we're gonna be looking at, how it's gonna be installed, pre-bid meetings, awarding, and a mid-project site visit.
So that 750,000 is just a rough guess at this point.
To install them in the summer of 2026, yes, it is.
I think we put it on so that for this year, we could at least move ahead with having the RFP out and get some information. And then at that point, we talked last week when we were meeting about how we would fund this, and that's probably not a conversation for right now, but that we would at least we'd get the pricing and then make a plan for what year we would tackle this and how we would fund it.
I've been thinking more since the administration we sat down a couple of weeks ago. Is it possible the RFP will go out within the next couple of weeks, people will respond January, February. So what, I lost my train, excuse me. So I'm anticipating at least 3 bids to come in from engineers. And at that time, I'll present that information to you. And then to lock in that engineer, we might have to pay a fee to get the ball rolling for him to develop the scope of works and everything like that, to get that out. And then for the summer of 2026. Yeah, 26, July of 26, we'll get that rolling. So can we put into some of that money for this year
Into a trust?
into the trust?
Yeah.
Do a warrant article for it.
Right, so we can do a warrant article, requesting that we put money into whatever trust would be appropriate for that type of work. If, assuming there is one.
That'd be school building repair, expendable trust?
That would
There's
probably, yeah.
several that I can never remember
We
the
can take a
difference,
look,
but
Okay. So can we add 15,000?
I was gonna say, how much do you think would, about 15?
Yeah, I'm thinking,
There might also be funds in there. I don't remember. I have no concept of how much is in there at this
We
point.
can talk about it too.
Yeah,
We
we're
might
gonna
wanna put more money in it to think about the cost
Correct.
in the future.
If we're
not
anticipating
spending one
750,
year. Yeah.
we might want to start planning for that this March.
Definitely.
And I'm gonna ask a question, that sounds kind of dumb, but this is, when we're talking about, this is like the HVAC, so we would have them all, is that correct? Or we call them UV?
Ventilators, that's the old school name of them. So we
Well, we've been hearing a lot about, oh, the school needs a whole bunch of HVAC work done. Is this?
Is that separate?
nope, we can combine it. We'll,
Oh, that's something else.
basically what
That's
I'm
something else.
anticipating
Yeah, that's
him
what
to
I'm
do,
trying to get.
yeah, is to bring us up to date, up to speed with the latest and greatest, not gold plated, but what our school is requiring today, or what a school is renovating today to bring into their school to make it a little more accommodating in August, June. So, yep,
So you're not talking about the window AC units, these are not the window AC units right
Correct,
there.
no.
This is the other, like, the grates on the outside of the building you said.
yeah.
So,
Separate from AC.
And then doing this, would it, I mean, if you do this, is it, then someone later on is gonna say on the inside, we wanna do this, but we didn't need what's done on the outside, but should they be done together? I'm not making any sense, am I?
No, can you,
You just said, okay. So you said this work is for the grates that are on the outside, right?
right,
But there's work that needs to be done on the units on the inside.
yeah, yeah.
So I just wanna make sure that whatever's done on the outside matches with what's gonna have to be done on the inside, so we don't have to redo anything.
The outside is only the grates. I'm sure they're gonna be able to stick within that grate parameter. The units actually might be smaller than what we have now. The ones in the classroom are just monsters. So it might be freeing up some space.
Okay, 'cause that's a
Okay.
crazy amount of
Everything is-
money.
Can you clarify what the classroom units do? Do they heat? They don't cool, right?
They will bring in, if
Fresh air.
the ambient temperature of the outside exceeds inside, it will bring in whatever the air temperature is to try to cool the room. But there's, what side of the building are you on, and in the sun all day? Are the dampers working correctly? Are they mixing the air when they shouldn't be? So, yes, we're looking at that problem right now.
Okay.
The new, more energy efficient ones will, we'll be able to see what's going on. You'll be able to feel what's going on and they're correctly working, so.
And they would control, or they would help with the temperatures in the room?
Yes.
Okay.
Heating, cooling,
Okay, so
more
it's,
efficient.
I don't know anything about this, admittedly.
It's okay.
Is it similar, like are the new units that we're talking about, like similar to like a mini split?
Yes,
I have that. Okay, I get that. Okay.
yes.
Got it.
That's what we're calling them these days, and they're called classroom UV. So what we were calling HVAC would now be called UV. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, they're the same.
This is gonna heat and cool.
What?
It's gonna heat and cool.
Yes. Well,
$750,000.
I don't know how much cool,
They're not air
this is gonna be a
conditioners.
decision for you guys to make how much cooling we want because AC is expensive.
Right.
So it's one of those, we can get gold standard. We can have it just, lower the temperature down to a comfortable 68 in August, September. There's
But what you're looking at is, you're saying 3 bids. You're wanting 3 bids, right?
minimum.
Minimum of 3 bids. And so these bids might have different,
No,
Pieces
that's
of
why we
machinery?
want, that's why we want the engineer to develop the scope of works, and he will specify what type of units we're working. So there's no I want apples to apples, I don't want apples, pears, and grapes, because
right,
I can tell you and talk about heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, but I don't know a train unit from a Lennox unit from, so he's gonna give us a clear shot of exactly what everybody needs to supply. So we're not having to figure everything out.
Okay, so when there's going to be a discussion about what the board wants to move forward with, that'll be at the time of that engineering discussion.
Correct.
before the bidding goes out.
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
I think maybe this is probably what Ellen's asking, and at least if not, then I'm curious about it. But I think what you're saying is, correct me if I'm wrong, is that replacing the system will, for the next, let's say, 5-10 years, be able to allow the school and students to function at a cooler temperature than what it's been for the last 5 or 10 years.
I would assume so, yes.
However, that's still gonna be, let's say, on hot days, maybe 75 degrees, not 68 degrees, because we're not including air conditioning, because that's gonna be a lot more expensive. And so
We
with
can
this-
include AC, but it all depends on what the price.
So I'm trying to clarify what I'm
Okay,
understanding, but that's all right. So then I think what I'm understanding is that what this proposal is going to be, for the next 10 years, able to get us to a somewhat comfortable temperature of, let's say, 75 degrees in the building so students can focus, but not to 68 degrees, because that's gonna be way more expensive, and that would include air conditioning. And considering climate change and warming temperatures and all that stuff, it may actually not in 10 years cool it that much.
Right.
And so perhaps, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe as we're thinking about a 10-year or a CIP plan here, maybe we should consider air conditioning if we want our kids in 10 years, if we're still in this building, to be able to focus. If we can't cool it below 80 degrees with this system that we're putting in now, or you're proposing, then maybe we should be considering air conditioning as a future long-term sort of
Yeah.
idea.
I'd also like to add that it's not just August and September, it's May and June.
Mhm.
And even when I was working here, we had days when it went up into the 90s in the classrooms. So, I mean, it's more, and that's happening more and more.
Yes.
See a lot of teachers' heads nodding.
And if there is some sort of a structural change happening, we're gonna be proposing in the next couple of years, would that create problems with this project that we're talking about? Or is this the kind of conversation where we should be thinking strategically, 10 years, maybe we should start to wrap these things together in some way to try to, and maybe that's a much bigger
That was my
idea.
question, yeah.
I have a plan of your question.
I think that'll be more of a question for an engineer to see what the path forward from this unit,
Okay.
what the migration path is.
So I just want to make sure at this point that you're not trying to sort of steer us in a particular direction
Yeah, no,
without
I-
considering the bigger other options that we may need
Yeah,
to
I
consider.
don't want to just close us into something that's gonna last 5, maybe 10 years. And yes, we always buy something and then the next month there's a latest and greatest that comes out. But I want, like our fire alarm system, we've got expansion on that until years down the road, additions down the road. So I wanted to be able to expand with the school or the needs of the school.
Or at least be flexible enough to address changes as they come, or adapt to changes as they come in 10 years. Maybe
Yes.
soon, but maybe account for that.
Are you like thinking about renovations or?
We started talking at the last meeting about something in maybe a 5-year plan. Do we still come back to this idea of a change to our space here in the building? And it's for a different board in 5 years, but we start thinking about it now. It's
Yep.
something we brought up last meeting.
Got it. Cool.
Okay. And then 25, 26 will be the big year for the installation of the UV units. Then going on to 26, 27, 7,000, 20, replacement of code-based tile throughout the first and second floor. I believe that's 10 years old, maybe a little over.
Probably
It's not original, right?
No.
Okay, so it's old. It's caked with wax. It's seen better days. It's starting to peel off. The adhesive's drying up, falling off the wall. So that's a cosmetic upgrade, just to make the school look more presentable. Parking lot lighting, estimating that at 25,000 installation.
Is there a reason that we would wait until 26, 27 to do that, other than just cost?
Is there a reason to do that?
Yeah, I thought it was going up sooner.
Right.
I have a question.
Nope, we can move that over to 24, 25. Have it done this summer.
Yeah, I mean, I know that was a big concern for people is the parking lot lights, and I know, when we paved, the parking lot, it was a big concern for us at the time. And I think we had sort of prepped the parking lot for lights. So I think we as a board should consider doing it if we have the funds in a trust, or, I don't know if we could do it for the parking lot.
I mean, no, that was specifically
Paving.
paving, but I think getting the ideas out that
Mhm.
Chris has is great, and then when we do the warrant article and have the conversations about funding trusts,
Yeah.
we may wanna move things. around.
Sure.
And that's just a safety thing for teachers.
Yeah, it's really,
I mean, especially
Very-
this time
it's
of
very,
year
very
where
dark.
it's dark.
yeah, it's floors, whatever.
Right. Or, a few weeks ago where it was dark when people were coming to school.
Yep.
Um,
Yep, I can move that into for the summer project.
Yeah, I think we should discuss it, and if it's feasible, I just didn't know if there was like a particular reason that we needed to push it, or if it required a lot of permitting or something that
Nope,
made
it'll
it
be
longer.
a relatively simple project.
Great, thank you.
Real good. And then cafeteria 4, again, 10 years old, showing wear and tear, cracks in the floor from the expansion of the concrete. My high school kids did a good job patching it, but it's just one of those things, wear and tear, timely repair. Again, cosmetic, because the floor is in good shape, but it'll just freshen it up. Then we have window replacement. We have no scheduled time for that. Classroom countertops or the elevator replacement. But those are probably the next big things that we should consider tackling.
The elevator replacement, is the elevator original to the school?
Yes.
And
And
is
it
it,
comes down to, we've never had, it's not a high-use elevator. It's
Okay.
just age and the difficulty finding parts for it.
Got it.
Something goes wrong.
I assume we have to get it inspected.
We get it quarterly inspected, and then once a year with the elevator company and RB Lewis for the recall that was installed last summer.
I assume it will be a pretty big cost. So
Yes.
probably good, if we set a date, even if it's 9 years from now, to start putting money away for.
What generally gets moved in that elevator?
Students, sometimes books, paper, heavy items, nothing major. Sometimes furniture during the summer, if someone's coming up or down, equipment, our auto scrubber.
Anyone have questions or thoughts?
Is that the solar project? We did get a response from our attorney, and he checked in with someone else at the firm. And they requested under, our contact with, I forget, is it
Barrington
Revision?
Powder.
Or Barrington, yeah, is going to reach out. The only way our attorney would feel comfortable with his suggestion is if the USDA said that we could proceed and that would not violate the conditions of the grant. So he was gonna reach out to the USDA and say, this is what we were thinking we could do. Tell us that we'd be okay if we did this, and we'll wait to
It's
hear.
very easy if they say no. I mean, it's like, gosh.
Hopefully, fingers crossed, that they will accept our solution.
Any other discussion about the capital improvement project? Cool, thanks for coming, Chris.
Thank you.
We do have, multiple people from that. Two extra.
I have only 2 extra budget packets for NBC members. I didn't know there would be more than 2 here, so if anyone on the NBC wants to steal a packet, I only have 2, I'm sorry about that. Sorry.
Carol's don't
Carol's
trip.
out. So
I was gonna say,
Oh. Thank you. Amber included her summary. A lot of this was just notes. So the changes in your packet, there's a new operating budget, default budget, food service budget, estimated high school tuition, which I will tell you, we do have, I'll give you the most up-to-date numbers because they've been tripling in past due date, unfortunately. But we still have time to update those in time to take your vote, but they're pretty close at the moment. We have the district assessment for you, and then you have your estimated revenue and estimated tax impact sheet. So the increase from the changes since the last meeting for the operating budget are $93,572, and the default increased by $72,081. The changes, I'll just go through, stop me if you want to stop, but I'll just give you a quick summary. You can have this in your drive, I think. The page 4 regular program, the line 12, there's an increase of $69,536, and that was again the estimated tuition budgeted prior, went up a little bit. We got the actual rate from Co-Brown, which is great. We were able to make that change, and that will be the rate for next year.
And to be clear,
And-
that's the increase from our last meeting,
Yes.
not the increase of the line total.
Correct. Yes, this changes since your last meeting. We got the actual tuition rate from them. And then we got some more updated student numbers, so those both things were updated. And then special education on pages 6 and 7, those were just notes that were added for you. And then line 48, there was an increase of $166,512, and that was in special placements, and that was because of that tuition rate increase in Co-Brown, and the special ed based tuition also went up, so just made that adjustment based on the number of students we anticipate going and what their new special ed rate is. Page 10, instructional services, that was no monetary changes, just added a note about collective bargaining. Line 90, same thing, added the collective bargaining note. Page 18, maintenance and operations, again, no monetary changes, but the board did have a question about what was spent in 23-24, so Amber added some notes for you on the budget summary. No monetary changes, line 47, she checked to make sure citywide was spent under this line in 23-24 and reported that a total of $73,020 was spent for fiscal year of 23-24. That was a question someone had the last meeting. On line 155, health insurance, there's a $162,361 decrease in that line, and that's because we had advice from the insurance company. We were hearing at least 10% increases, so Amber had budgeted 12, and Deerfield came in as one of the lowest, which was only 5.1, so that's great. So we were able to lower her predicted amount on that. Lines 165 and 166, we have a placeholder. We haven't had this conversation yet. We'll do that in non-public, but she put an overall placeholder of a 3% increase for staff that are not covered by collective bargaining agreements in the budget. And then in the end, similarly, the food service budget, there's a 3% increase placeholder for food service staff until you can actually take action on that. And then they also had the change to the health rate, so that was lowered a little bit. That's the same for both of those. And then she had a little graph for you. I think she saw in your past presentations that the graphs were popular to show the breakdown in the, there's a budget increase right now of $1.3 million. So she did a graph to show the percentage that could be attributed to tuition, special ed, benefits, food service, and then building operations and overhead.
What would the benefits be for that 18%? Because that's not healthcare, that must be something else. 'Cause healthcare
It's
is
probably
something
all the fringes. So there's a whole section on fringes, so health, dental, retirement, FICA, all that stuff is usually what she refers to. It's fringe benefits.
In high school tuition?
Yep.
So she had, I know, originally told us, she estimated that go Brown based on past, she had told us like a 2 point something is what she originally,
I don't remember that, but
Right.
the teacher was a
right, but it ended up being
Four, yeah.
4.4.
Yeah, I forget what she said she
So-
originally estimated.
The last presentation, I believe she used the rate from last year.
Yeah, she did.
Okay.
She didn't estimate,
Oh, okay, all
an
right.
increase.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
there was a 4.5 or 4.4% increase for co-brown tuition.
Is there an increase in both PA and Concord?
We don't have either one of those numbers yet.
Okay.
She's working on the ARE tuition now for Pembroke Academy.
Okay.
So when she's done with that, we'll have that exact number and we haven't received it yet.
So right now, the 27% increase in tuition is strictly from co-brown, right? And then
The
the,
number of students.
oh, could be the number of students too, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
But it's
have
an
the,
increase over the other budget, so it would
yes,
be
from the
because-
other budget.
Yeah. And then the special ed, would that include the special ed from co-brown?
Yes, the special ed increase was, I think that was the only change, was the special ed tuition from Co-Brown that just adjusted.
Thank you.
And then if you want for your notes, we have updated, I think we're waiting for 2 students, right? For the high school numbers, they were due on November 15th. We have, for freshmen next year, we'll have 33 so far at Co-Brown, 24 at Concord, and 2 for Pembroke Academy. And we're waiting on 2 more, and Amber will update as we go, so we have those final numbers. I think we have even had a few changes come in since she updated this, so you'll get another update.
So the changes because students are changing where they want to go?
Yeah, she had just put an estimate of how many kids were gonna pick which school for the 8th graders, and then as the numbers come in, we update to the actual.
Yeah.
So this being my first time through a budget, I'm learning a lot and trying to understand a lot, and there's been some things I've been thinking about. And I just kind of want to say them because it might be things other people have thought about that are new to this too. But, I mean, we've all seen taxes go up in Deerfield and none of us like it. From our last tax bill to now, we all saw an increase. Be great to be able to come up with a way to bring it down, but some things I got thinking about. Our first big increase, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe some of that had to do with the $1 million being returned to the town from COVID money. I wasn't on the board at that time, you may have been on the board at that time, but the selectmen returned like $1 million. And then the next year, there wasn't the $1 million to return, so that was part of our first big tax increase, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but just things I've been trying to think about, like how did we get to where we are? I encourage people to look at the special ed presentation. Even after working here for 38 years, I did not understand all the funding of special ed until I went, when I became on school board, and went and spent time with Jess at the SAU to have her explain things to me. I did not know how the state popped into funding, or even realized how much it cost. And special ed has gone up a lot, not just in Deerfield, but statewide, national. I wish someone would do a study to try to find out why we're seeing such an increase in it. After teaching as long as I did, I have some theories and thoughts on things. I'm sure there's more scientific ways. We're not just looking at a child struggling in reading. We're looking at emotional, behavioral, medical. It's very different than when I went to school, what the special ed population was. And yes, we want all students everywhere to get the education they deserve.
but I think this will help people to understand. And I think that's the part, is people don't always understand. I did not understand the difference in cost of transportation, that it can be $100 a day to transport a student. So there's a lot to understand. And the state even controls different things from what I know, like where kids can go for placements and stuff. We don't have the say in that. And we also, in an article I was just reading, it looks like we will be receiving less in special ed. Like there's,
For catastrophic aid.
yeah, so there is some that we will be getting less in. But I encourage people to look at that presentation that Kendra and Jess put together, because it really explains a lot and I found helpful. I also sometimes am having a hard time understanding when I hear we need to spend less, yet the budget last year was less than the default, but the budget was voted down. So I trying to understand where we're gonna cut any kind of spending. And high school choice has impacted the budget. There's no doubt about it. And I was frustrated when I hear, well, it was advisory, you could have made changes. I wasn't on the board at that time, but I was here at every single meeting listening. And I heard people saying, it's advisory, you could have been making changes to it. Well, I wonder what conversations we'd be having with families right now had we decided to change it and not go by how it was written. If the board had said, let's stick with Concord, because financially that's a better deal, or if we had gone with top-off agreements, families that might not have been able to do that. So I think people need to know that is part of the increase. My whole concern about all of this, and it was, I'll come right out and say, it's why I ran for school board. DCS should not have to step backwards because of cost we can't control, either with tuition or with not having surplus because of what happened, or because of high school tuition costs. All through the high school choice, I kept hearing people say, you spend this much on DCS kids, why don't you want to spend the same on your high school kids? Okay, now if we're spending this much on our high school kids, we shouldn't back up on DCS kids. And yes, I would love to see a way to save some money. My taxes go up too, just like everybody else in this room. But the population of DCS students, which is more than our high school population, they shouldn't be the ones taking the brunt. So I think as we look at budget, as the community looks at budget, I think those are things that we need to think about. Thank you.
Thank you. So we went over the differences between the budget from last meeting and this meeting. What do people want to talk about? I'm sure there's plenty of conversations to have tonight. And this is not a hard and fast rule, but this is sort of the main budget discussion meeting. So next meeting, we are reviewing the budget still, but we do need to get the budget to the MBC immediately after the next meeting. So if we're going to be proposing a lot of changes, if we're going to be having sort of robust discussion, we should do it tonight. Because otherwise there will be a delay in us getting the budget to the MBC. And as the person who has to go to the MBC meetings, I would prefer if we didn't do that to me. Because they will be cranky about it, which is fair. They are also on a time, a tight time schedule. So, we do need to sort of be mindful that we have to firm up the budget next week or next meeting. So if there are things that people want to discuss, would love to hear them.
You had Mrs. You asked
Yes.
Mrs. Lee to prepare some things, and Mrs. McConnell, so if you want to hear from them, they're
I would-
here to do that as well.
Yeah, so I took the liberty of, emailing a few questions over to Patty and Kristen about some budget things. So I think one thing that we talked about in a meeting in June, was about kindergarten. So currently our budget still, I think, has 4 kindergarten teachers on the roster. We currently only have 3 kindergarten teachers. So there's cost savings this year, but it wasn't removed from the budget. And so I think the board has to decide, are we continuing with 3 teachers and removing a roster position, or are we sticking with 4? And I would love to hear from Principal Withy how it's going with 3. Obviously, we are, we changed our ratios last year, student-teacher ratios last year, and we are currently at the max amount that we had recommended. So I think we had recommended a range of 15 to 18 kids per kindergarten, and we are at 18 kids for all the kindergartens. So we'd just love to hear sort of the thoughts on that so that we can sort of make a decision on what to do.
Kindergarten is the hardest to predict for, right? There was some concern because the year prior to this school year, we had an anomaly of a class of 40 or 41 students. In 4 classes, that was 10 or 11 kids per class. That class has gone on to be in 3 first grades. And had we known at the time, then maybe we would have considered doing 3 kindergartens that particular year. There is no say in how many kindergartners you will get from year to year. The average has been about 50 to 55 students. We know we have 21 preschoolers from DCS that are going to be rising to our kindergarten program. Some of them do end up moving, some of them stay, most of them stay. We do know that we have approximately 8 students in special education that will need support services, all the things that come with that. We knew going into this school year that we had 12. I tried to fight really hard, knowing that those 12 students also came with some one-on-one paraeducators, a shared paraeducator, 2 kindergarten classroom aides. There was going to be a lot of adults that were going to be stuffed into 3 classrooms when we decided to go down to 3. Our administration's prediction is we're in this field, we're doing this work. Kids are not coming prepared for kindergarten like they have been over the last several years. COVID, the pandemic, has done a number on our children. We will be feeling the effects of this for many years. To me, having 10 or 11 or 12 kindergartners to start their school year on school life on a positive note like that is so much more important than stuffing 18 kids in a kindergarten class. You can't move in some of our 2 of our kindergarten classes. 2 of them are, large enough, but it is, you go in there and it is packed, and kids are, it would have been a much smoother year, I believe, if we had stayed with 4 kindergartens. There's no doubt about it. Like I said, it's hard to predict what's going to come next year. We don't know, but I do know that kids are not coming as prepared for kindergarten as they have in the past. I do know that there are several mental health issues that are coming with our kids. I do know that there are social emotional things. I do know that there's learning issues. We know these things. And keeping our kindergartens as small as we can is our objective. Now, going into first grade, they will be 18 going into first grade as well. The difference in our kindergarten last year in going into first grade this year, I know they're just little, but there is some growth that happens from kindergarten to first grade. They get school, they get how to sit on a carpet, they get all the things. They're starting to be readers, they're writers, they're mathematicians, they're scientists, like they get it. They're like, oh, this is school, we get it. And it's been, it's having those 4 kindergartens last year was helpful in laying the foundation. We spent a lot of time in kindergarten last year, and we're seeing the effects of that support this year in first grade. I don't know how else to put it, in the sense that it is hard to say. I can't imagine that we'll have another year of 40 kids for several years. I imagine that the numbers will be upwards of 50 and 55, which is what it has been over my last 8 years here. Sometimes kids move in over the summer. Sometimes kids move out. That's
Thank you. No, that's
information for
very
you.
helpful. I mean, I have a kindergartner, but she doesn't give me that level of detail, unfortunately. So, what do we want to do?
So you're talking about the extra support in the kindergarten classroom. Does each kindergarten classroom have a full-time adult in there, like or are they going between? Is that,
You mean paras and?
yeah, paras and everything?
There is a one-on-one in one classroom. There's 2 one-on-ones in another classroom. And then we have a shared para in
All 3 rooms.
all 3 rooms have a full-time adult, an additional full-time adult. We have one.
There are 4 special education paraeducators assigned to kindergarten and 1 classroom aide. Historically, we've often had multiple classroom aides in kindergarten. We made the decision because there were so many special education support personnel to move some of that classroom aide support to first grade, recognizing that there were secondary adults available. However, many of them are assigned to specific students.
So the secondary adult is assigned to a child, so.
Specific student or students.
Right, so is not available.
To make copies, take a student to
Well,
a
never-
nurse.
For a walk, for
Put on
all the
snow
things.
cones
Right,
for
yeah,
tiny
no,
children.
that was just
Right.
because.
I mean, at the meeting where we decided to go to only 3 kindergartners was pretty vocally against it at the time. It's hard because, obviously we want to try to make responsible decisions, but our responsible decisions also have to be looking at the children and their development. I mean, I think some children might be fine. I hope my kindergartner will be fine, but not every child is going to be fine because they were in a big class. And that is very unfortunate. And I, would hate to just continue this practice of let's do max amount of students to save a dollar amount when I think the fundamentals learned in K through 3 especially are the most important learning fundamentals that you can have. So I would be for keeping the roster as it currently is and hiring another kindergarten teacher, whenever it's appropriate to do that.
And I guess that something to consider is that, if it's not going to be 4 kindergartens and we end up with a small kindergarten, we could have 4 first grades and make the first grade classes a little bit smaller to offer
We
that
can
level of support.
reuse that FTE.
Mhm.
And I think something else to consider, let's say we make a great budget this year and it's approved, that's going to be our default budget for, in the event we don't pass another budget again for 5 years. So if we take out a position from the roster, that is now the default budget going forward. We have to remember, and getting an added position is very hard. So I don't want to be wasteful, but I do think, just sort of anecdotally, what I've been hearing about kindergarten, I think everyone's trying really hard. I do think they're a little bit, a little feral. And I'm sure they could benefit from smaller classes.
They absolutely could.
I say keep it at 3.
Would you like to make a motion to remove the position?
Let me, can I speak before?
Yeah, yeah, I'm just saying, if that's what we want to do,
I
that's
think
not
I'm okay with keeping the position, but I do wanna like really reevaluate the numbers before we actually make a decision to hire somebody. I think that's how I feel
Yeah.
pretty strongly about that. The other thing I wanna mention is you said how the classrooms are so incredibly crowded. And this is maybe just hearsay, but I've heard from people that there's so much stuff in some of those rooms that they're taking up a lot of space that they shouldn't take up. So maybe that needs to be looked at as well. How much, and I don't care if they use it for teaching, like take it home when you need it, bring it back. I mean, like, we are pack rats, right? I mean, anyone who's taught knows it. You see, I might use that box of straws someday, so I'll keep it. But I just think that what I've heard is that one or two of the classrooms are just so packed full of stuff that they're taking up a lot of room that could be space for the kids. So I'm just gonna throw that out there, whether that's.
And it's a good point, like, we don't have to decide tonight what we're doing about kindergarten next year.
Yeah.
What a motion would have to be tonight is to remove a roster position. So that
I
it's
guess
removed
I
from the
would like to
budget.
do that, just because we don't know what the numbers could be in the future, and they may all of a sudden get bigger. But I do want to have a conversation before a
Sure.
decision is made to hire somebody.
And I think we
That's-
always have those discussions, especially when it comes to contract renewal time, and what things are looking like as we learn numbers for kindergarten.
Just keep in mind that March, April is hiring time.
Right.
And when you wait and wait, you end up with somebody that I'm not saying you don't end up with great people, because we have ended up with great people. But just the prime hiring time is between March and May.
I was wondering, has any thought been given to that class that's 41 kids? Has any thought been given to turning that into 2 classrooms instead of 3? That group of 41 that's going to move through. As they get older, that's really not that much to ask a 3rd grade teacher or a 4th grade teacher to have 20 or 21 kids in their class. It's not unheard of or unusual. Right?
And I was fortunate most years. I had below 20, but there were years that I had 22 or 23.
I mean, I know as middle school, but there were times when I had 22 or 23 kids.
Can I just
Yeah.
clarify you on when you said that's what I would like to do? I'm not sure if what you'd like to do is remove it or keep it in.
Oh, I was thinking keeping it in for now.
I didn't.
Because once you remove it from the budget, you remove it, and that concerns me, because we need.
Unless the budget fails, and we get the default.
Right, that's the default, and they're there anyway, yeah.
Can't get rid of it.
Yeah. There anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we can always, make hiring and sort of allocation decisions later, but we do need to decide on the number of FTEs that we're including in the budget. So, if you would like to reduce it, would be to make a motion. Otherwise, it's already in there, so we wouldn't have to do anything.
I'd like to make a motion to remove it.
To remove 1 FTE from
Yes.
teacher salary? Okay. Is there a second?
I'm gonna second it, because I'd like to hear.
Sure, I have a discussion. You can
As I
second
said,
for
a discussion
for
about
sure.
it, yeah. So I'll second it. But I want to hear another side of it, because I'm.
I'm mainly thinking again of the space that we have in the school, and the fact that I don't think that taxpayers are going to want to go ahead and make another expansion anytime soon. So I'm thinking that we have to combine what we have. And like you said, there's a lot of stuff being stored. Maybe we need to be going through and like you said, maybe take things home, back and forth, things like that. I think a lot of the space issues need to be looked at very carefully. So I'm thinking that's one way to start. Getting the kids back in school, out of modulars, back into the school.
So you're thinking if we have one less
It's kind of forcing.
grade, then maybe 1 class could come in from the modulars?
Well, we've already done that.
No, I understand, but for another year. But it wouldn't get rid of one of the modulars, because it'd still have to be somebody in the
Well,
other
if
half.
we If we reduce the one FTE, then we have what we have now, right?
Mhm.
Right.
So it wouldn't matter. We're not gonna be bringing somebody in.
Right, that's what,
But if we go to
Same
four, but if we go
So
to
you
four,
do agree, I think.
but if we go to 4 kindergarten classrooms again, and we don't change any of the other grades, then we might have to put another class out.
Right.
What is it was intended to be a 4th kindergarten classroom, no, it's not. What is that space being used for?
It's a second grade classroom.
It's a second grade classroom.
That was
It was out in the
from the
modular.
modulars
From the
inside.
module, gotcha.
And now we have reading, the math specialists and the math interventionists out there
In the module.
in the modulars, yep.
Okay, so there is a motion on the table. All in favor of reducing the FTEs for teachers by 1?
Aye.
Okay. All opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Okay. That has failed. Other discussions?
It's good to have the discussion.
Absolutely.
And it'll come up again, so.
It will certainly come up at NBC, so.
Probably
need to
what
discuss
also will come up in the NBC is the bus question.
The bus. Great
Should we
point.
vote that now?
Absolutely, we should go to the bus. Okay. You're gonna have to remind me of the numbers. So we currently have budgeted for, I don't know what the bus is.
7 buses at DCS.
7 buses at DCS, and how
And-
many do we have?
We have 6.
Okay.
And we've budgeted 3 high school buses and we have 2.
So in our current budget year, which is still a default budget from 6 years ago, I don't know how many default budgets we have, 6 in a row?
I bet this is my 7th year and I've only had 1 year of a past budget.
So it's been the same budget or the same number of
5 years.
buses that we've been budgeting for
Mhm.
6 years, even though for a number of years, we've not been able to even find staffing to run those 2 or 3,
Mhm.
depending on if it's COVID or not.
I would say pre-COVID, we had all 7. I don't know if we had all high school buses, but we definitely had 7 DCS buses. And then once the pandemic hit, we have not been able to, we had the double runs and we had.
Right.
Mm-mm.
So this time last year, we were debating, do we cut one of those buses from the anticipated number? And we did, as a board last year, decide to reduce that number of budgeting because we haven't been able to staff it for 7 years. And then it was put back in.
At NBC and then taken out again at deliberative.
Correct.
So there's actually 2 buses that we don't use, though, so we budget for 2 buses that we don't use.
Yes. So we could theoretically
And
remove
that's about
2 buses.
140,000 maybe?
Yeah, it's about 70 or 80 per bus.
I contacted Kelly too, I was pulling
Oh.
her email because I forgot to print it. So she asked when the survey or the choices were finished, if we could send her the names of the students and the addresses, and she would look at that and look at the routes and see if there would be a cost impact, because I told her that was part of the conversation when students are making their choices. Is there a point at which we say, okay, 1 bus to Concord, 1 bus to Co-Brown, and would there be a cost impact to that? So she's gonna look into that for me as soon as she has all the names and addresses, which I will send her and just let her know what the station. Got it.
So I, regardless, I think, of what we're doing with the high school buses, we have to decide how many buses we want to budget for. For several years now, we have budgeted for buses that we have not been able to use. So, I mean, I would be in favor of cutting. Actually, I think she only included 2 buses in our operating budget. Maybe not, I can't.
the 2 buses that we have that go to Concord, is it 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon? And is that because they're full and they need that?
Neither is totally full. It's because they wouldn't both fit onto 1 bus.
Right.
There's enough students that are at least reserving spots that they could not all fit onto 1 bus.
Okay. And I think the bigger issue, I mean, besides them not all fitting, but if you did, 1 bus for Concord, 1 bus for Co-Brown, if you were doing doorstop pickups, the kids would be on the bus for 2.5 hours. Driving around Deerfield, picking up kids all over
I mean,
town.
that's another possibility, is to have a place where they.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. But that discussion of whether we're gonna have a bus to Concord and a bus to Co-Brown is sort of separate and apart from, are we putting in the budget 2 buses or 3 buses? I mean, we can certainly discuss what we wanna do with buses and where we would like them to go tonight, but we really don't need to decide on the number of buses that we're including in the budget.
It's not limited to Concord, it's also for year. Do we need the
Correct.
7th bus for year?
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna ask, do we need 7 DCS?
Start with either one. We should talk about both.
We still have several parents who do drive 80 cars a day, 100.
Oh, that's funny.
So cute.
Yeah, so cute.
I was gonna say.
I would say
100.
we're 140.
140 cars.
I would say 130 to
Twice a
140.
day coming to our parking lot.
Yes.
I participated for the first time the other day. It was very overwhelming. But like, okay, so even if we got the 7th bus for DCS, do we think that number would decrease? Do we think people would put their kid on the bus, or they're so used to coming and doing drop off that the 7th bus wouldn't really pick up those additional kids? It would just make the already bus riders have a shorter bus route eventually.
Right.
Hard to
If
say.
there
It's
were
hard to
shorter
say.
bus routes, would more kids be on the bus?
Right.
Is that the question?
Yeah, I mean, we put out the all calls several times, like begging parents if there's any way, we literally don't have busing. And that has been since COVID, and we've never recovered back to the number of buses that we had. So we haven't done any updated survey because we just never had the buses to offer.
Yeah.
So I would have no guess. I don't think any of us would have. People would say, yay, there's another bus, I'm not doing this anymore. Or,
And then if you put that out there as a survey, you're getting their hopes up, and then we may not even be able to get a driver.
and surveys are not,
Maybe not all
they're just not.
I guess I would say that 7 buses would alleviate some of the routes. You know, kids
Right.
kids are getting picked up
Yeah.
pretty early and getting
Oh, yeah.
home.
We're on the bus at 6:52.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Sometimes a few minutes early.
Mhm.
And we have a great bus driver.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, I think it's hard. I think I would say that we should keep 7 in the budget for DCS, because if we got another bus, I would love to put it in motion to alleviate some of the hour-long bus rides for kids in the morning.
And so after just spending the week with my grandchildren, because their parents were away, my granddaughter gets on she's high school, but she's on the bus at 6:25. And yeah, and she was, I mean, really her house in comparison to her school is, I mean, 5 over, it would be like 15 minutes. So she gets on, and Mason, I can't remember, his school starts later, but he's still, so I get it, the early rides, and I hate it for kids, but that's not just Deerfield either. That's everywhere. And I think even back to when I was in school, I was in a cooperative school district, and I know my friends that came from Brentwood and Kensington and Kingston and stuff are on the buses very early in the morning.
And everyone's having a hard time getting drivers, and that's just that's a national problem. So if we were to keep the 7 buses, because it would make it better, with the possibility of getting a driver, it's in the default budget anyway. I think the next question, unless somebody wants to talk about that.
No, I will say it's in the default budget because it's a contract, less so because it's a default. More because it's our contract sale. Yeah.
If I'm looking at the numbers for Concord High is going to have about 130 students next year, and Co-Brown will have 74.
But half of Concord is upperclassmen.
That's the thing that changes.
Yeah,
They
that's
stop riding.
true. And if you look at the numbers of Co-Brown, you're going to have, you said 33, so it might be like 57 9th and 10th graders at Co-Brown. So that's quite a lot.
Right.
For freshmen and sophomore. And then you're also paid by the mile, right?
We have contracted amount for the bus, so I think Kelly's just trying to figure, that's why she wanted the addresses to give to like the general manager to say, okay, look at this, if we took this group of kids and went in a different direction, does that impact the cost of the bus?
I think with high school, there's no reason why you can't have a couple places around town where that's where they go for the bus.
We would just have to find those places.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
mean,
I think
DCS would work in the,
Well, DCS, they used to
It's
do
early.
the gas station, that used to be one of the places.
Still
What's that?
Still is.
Still is, okay, like
Used
Blue
to
Bowl.
do across from the Pinecrest Farm, where 43 comes to meet 107, right
Yeah.
there on the edge of the river.
Because I mean, they're old enough to be able to get home from wherever they are to get there and hopefully.
one concern we had back when, I forget when this was, 10, 8 years ago, but there was this arrangement where there was like a DCS bus that would
yes.
drive out to Mount Delight and then like pick up the kids from the high school. And there were some parental concerns about the snowbanks in the winter and not enough room for the kids to stand without being in the road, in the dark, in the cold, on the ice.
For high school.
And there were some safety issues at that point in terms of where they were
Yeah.
standing.
You'd have to come up with some good spots that are safe for them. But.
Yeah, I mean,
I just feel like we're doing so much because we don't even have to provide high school transportation.
Well, that's right. We don't
It's
have to
like-
provide anything to high school.
And technically, even though you don't even for, and I could be wrong, but I remember looking at elementary that's within like a 2-mile radius of the school, you don't have to provide for them either. Which I mean, to me, I'd rather get our high school kids, because if they can't get, the elementary
You don't want
kids are
them
gonna
you
get
don't want them
here.
dropping
We
out.
don't want them dropping out of school, so I'd like to see them get to school. But it's like,
I would say from an equity perspective, being able to, if have an option in Concord, we should make that available to students. And I think I would say we could, for sending people to Concord and not count on them funding.
oh, absolutely, I don't, I don't.
Yeah, I'm not saying
No.
get rid of them.
I mean, I think we've
I just
also-
want to remind people, so if you're not picking them up right at their door, I mean, we are doing more than we need to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have, as a board, made representations that if we are sending kids to Concord, there will be a bus.
We paid for bus. when
Yes,
we paid,
We pay for
we
the
paid
bus.
for busing when our kids weren't.
Right.
way back when.
Could we consider that, but then who's managing that?
No, I
You
I
pay
get it, I
Oh,
want
you
kids
pay
to
Dale,
get
okay.
there and everything, but there was one bus and you paid, and if you didn't reserve a spot in time, it was too bad.
Yeah, we might not have a spot.
And I don't say and I agree with it, it's just has happened in the past. We're old, Ellen.
Yes.
We've been there.
Well, every choice that we make to do more for students, we have to remember that that's going to increase the.
Yeah.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure that that's all out there and people realize it.
Yeah.
Those are things that we didn't necessarily pay for before. I think that co-brown numbers are getting up high enough that if we could give them a bus, we should, especially for freshmen and sophomores.
So do you want to have 3 buses in the budget?
I would keep three buses.
So you want to add a
There's
bus?
only 2 in there right now.
Oh, there is, I thought,
We've
oh,
only
because we
ever
went
had
to the
2,
default?
so we just put, we never put 2 in because that's all we've been able to get. So
So
it's-
I thought that we had in default 7 for this and 3 for the school.
in the default?
Yeah.
Yes, but the proposed operating budget,
Oh, for next year, Shannon.
Then I would add one, yes. I would move that we would add a 3rd bus into the budget for program, if we get a driver. But that
well,
would have
right,
to
so we
be.
can't add
we're
it if we get a
guaranteeing-
driver. We're
But I'm
adding it.
adding it to the budget, I'm just saying, we add it to the budget. We may not be able to provide it. I understand that, but I think it should be in the budget.
Is the cost for a high school bus or a DCS bus the same? Why do we need to break them out into 3, 2, and 7? Could we just say 9? And
They're different lines, aren't they, because you've got high school costs and you've got the DCS
if the
costs.
cost is that much, I don't actually remember.
And the board can choose, I mean, if you have 9 buses in the budget, you can decide at any point where you want to go.
So if we
That's your
make the
discretion.
total be 9 right now,
The total is 9 currently.
then if we get this budget passed, then we could decide where those are going to go. Could be 6 and 3 or 7.
Yes. Ellen would like to have 10 buses.
I think that's what I'm saying.
I think Mike,
They made a
I
motion.
think
That
that's
is what
quite a
I'm
motion.
saying.
yeah, have you made a motion?
No, I haven't.
Oh, I thought she said she made a motion at the moment.
Well, I think I
You were
did, that's
talking about it.
I move that we add an additional bus to the budget so that there will be 10 buses.
And second,
Further discussion.
I just have some information from CHS bus driver that there are currently 20 to 25 students on one CHS bus and 30 to 35 on the second bus.
That's this year,
That's this year.
Right.
So you're looking
And
at a
they're still gonna
total
be
of
getting
60
another-
students.
at least 23 or whatever more students, so they're gonna have, they'll almost end up with this.
But
But you'll lose some.
No, I was just thinking like the freshmen, I'm assuming that's the sophomores, so they'll lose the sophomores, they'll gain the ones that come. I'm sorry. Did it too fast for that?
Capacity is 70, isn't it? On a
77.
76, 77?
77.
77? Yep, I'm just throwing that out there.
Numbers were again, I'm
So
sorry.
20 to 25 on one bus and 30 to 35 on the second bus. So
I think my
60 kids.
issue with the busing remains that I don't anticipate that we're gonna get a third bus, even if we budget for it. And so it feels wasteful to me to include it in the budget when we have not gotten a third bus driver. And this is now multi-years of this exact issue has come up, and, you know, not that we have like an extreme amount of wiggle room, but if there were, you know, suddenly a bus driver available and it was for Deerfield, could we find money other places in the budget for a third bus?
Well, if you have 9, you currently have 6 and 2.
You're
so
right.
You could decide where you want that.
So we could decide
Bus to
not to put it at DCS and put the 7th bus. Right, so we already have one bus wiggle room.
Yes.
One bus that we can't find a driver for. So I would be opposed to adding a second bus that we don't have a driver for, I guess.
And if what part of our job description is to put together a budget that we think will pass, we still need all the voters in town to be on board with this, and they haven't been for 6 years. And so I do think that, I mean, it didn't work last year, but I think a lower number would make more sense. Didn't
But
work
it
last
hasn't
year.
in the past. A lower number has not made,
That's
we
true.
had a fight over it last year, we had a fight over it the year before. So I think this is something that the public has asked for. We haven't been able to do it because we can't get bus drivers, but they have repeatedly asked for another bus. So I guess that's kind of where I feel it's only 70,000 added to the budget.
But I do think it's a different discussion than we had last year, because last year we were saying only busing to Concord. This year, we're at least saying we will consider a bus to go, one of the 2 buses that we have to go to Co-Brown. So to me, it's a different discussion because we're not saying no to Co-Brown busing.
How much does one bus hold? I'm sorry.
Well, it's 77, but that's 3 to a seat. You obviously wouldn't have 3 high
Yeah,
schoolers,
right.
and they have
Kids
like
to a seat.
band equipment, they have sports equipment, things of that nature.
Okay, so right now, the Concord bus, does that just pick up kids at certain places in town? Like, why do we have 2 buses?
I think it's just because of your
routes.
town.
One starts on this side of town, one
Mhm.
starts on this side of town. They sort of meet in the middle and then drive to
Yes.
Concord.
And they go that way?
Yep.
Okay.
One goes out through 4, one goes through Bear Brook, like
Okay.
different routes to,
But do they stop at a lot of different places? Or do they just stop at a couple places?
no, it's a bunch.
There's
A bunch of places.
Yeah.
So if you were to reduce the Concord bus to just stopping at a few places within town, you could fit all the kids on one bus, right?
The current number you just gave us would be tight.
It would be
Like, in
tight.
theory, could-
Well, we don't know if it's gonna be that number, and right now, we only have 23 kids going in, we're gonna lose, obviously, a bunch of those kids if they become juniors, maybe not, but. Have you seen the change, Brian, in like the numbers of buses? I mean, you just emailed the number that the students at Concord take in buses, like, I wonder how much, how many kids they lose and how many kids they gain, just kind of wondering about.
No, I think it's fair to say it's like by junior or senior year,
They
most
don't
kids
take
are
the
not
bus
taking,
anymore,
right.
So you're gonna lose the sophomore class right now that's on the bus, and you're gaining the freshman class.
Right, which will be
is
smaller,
smaller,
yes.
normally have,
Mhm.
right? So I was just thinking the numbers might fit fine on a bus of 70, but you would have to do the stops. Like, I know my kids, when they went, there were just a few stops, they would turn around and go, right? Yeah. So anyway, that's just a thought. I guess if you do that, if you were to change the way we did the Concord bus, then I'd be okay with not adding the bus. Am I going round and round?
Yeah, I think the only issue with that is, like, we have not given parents notice of that. So did they choose Concord because they thought the bus was going to stop at their house and that's what worked for their family?
Well, do they ever stop at anybody's house?
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah, this year,
They
I
do?
mean, I think it goes out at South Road or Middle Road, and I think it does some stops near people's houses. Versus, it also stops at Mr. Mike's or whatever it's called now, and that's a collective place where people have to drive for a couple minutes to get there by 5:50 in the morning.
But if I'm.
So
a
did
work-
that, right, so Amy, just texted me, there's no stopping at houses.
No.
It's all collective,
Okay.
all groups, locations
For the high school.
for high school,
On South Road.
for both buses. And it could be that one is like
It might
next
be
to the
what
residential. Yeah.
Yeah, it might be like this road comes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just envisioning the types of concerns that we will get for a parent who's working, beyond 3:30 or whatever time the bus comes back to Deerfield, and their kid is now dropped off a mile from their house, and they picked Concord because we had historically had a bus stop next to their house.
Yeah.
So I just worry about that.
When we were a kid, we walked 2 miles uphill both ways. In the snow.
Kendra, may I also just add, there potentially could be a cost savings if a bus goes to Co-Brown, because we are legally responsible to transport our special education students who have selected Co-Brown as their high school choice. So right now, we are paying separately for that transportation, but many of those students certainly could be riders on a traditional school
regular
bus, if that became an option. So there could potentially be a cost savings in special education should the board decide to send a traditional school bus to Co-Brown. I can't speak specifically to
I was gonna say, can we
numbers,
require
but we
them
could.
to ride a regular bus? Like if their bus route was going to be an hour and a half around town, can we require them to do that versus whatever they're doing now?
It would be their transportation
Okay.
option, yes.
Got it.
Would that bus have to go to their house, or could it be at a local spot?
For the no, I think most of those kids would just hop on the bus.
The only students that would stay on special education transportation are students that would have needed it even to get to DCS, for whatever reason.
Which would be a comparatively small number.
Okay, thank you, that's helpful. So I guess the question still is, do we want a budget for one extra bus or
They
two
have to
extra
offer it
buses?
to Pembroke.
Okay, well, I made a motion.
Yeah, and then seconded.
Do you have to offer it to Pembroke kids if you're offering it to all of? Well, I'm just asking. I'm just putting this out there.
Not now.
I mean, the whole thing with Co-Brown, we said, well, there's not a number, there's not the number that
Mhm.
makes sense to send a bus. So if we ever got to a point where that many kids were going to Pembroke, then we'd probably have this conversation. But
Mhm.
right now, it's so few.
That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, all right.
No, you should just ride in the pumpkin bus if we were going to separate.
Oh, because you went right by there.
Here's a second, I think.
Okay. Okay, all in favor of,
Any more discussion?
you can have more.
No, I'm trying to make sure if we're doing it.
Ellen's trying to force her motion through. Moving it along. All in favor of
It's to add a bus.
to add a bus, a 10th bus to the budget.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Nay. 2-3. I imagine this is not the end of this discussion. But we will see what
You
happens.
know, it'd be interesting if we could get the information about how much money we might save with the special ed kids going on the bus to Cobra. That would be interesting. I'd like to, if there's any way we could get that information, because then we could compare 70,000 with how much we might save.
What other fun topics do we have? I emailed you about several things. Preschool. Oh. The topic of preschool comes up every so often. Especially I think because when we're reviewing the SAU budget, the SAU has a preschool. That's in Allenstown currently.
Yes.
And so the discussion always comes up, why do we have our own? And should we be having our own? Should we join the SAU preschool? And I don't know if anyone's ever actually come out and suggested that, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
Several times.
But I asked for some info about, is there a cost savings to us for having the preschool in-house? And just, is there a benefit to students, we think, having the preschool here?
Mrs. McConnell would love to
Yeah,
speak
would
to
you like to come up?
Sure. Do you have specific questions? I mean, the largest expense for having our in-house preschool is personnel, as with any school budget, right? It's always the personnel that costs the most. We have 2 certified staff that support our preschool here. They are 50% from the special education budget, 50% from the regular education budget. So they are dual certified in both areas. So we have 2 full-time certified staff and we have 2 full-time non-certified paraeducators that support the program. So that's probably the biggest expense of our preschool program. They are supported then by the related service providers, the occupational therapists, the speech pathologists, the physical therapists that support students with those identified needs. So those are kind of the biggest expenses. I mean, materials, supplies is minimal. They get the same classroom supply budget that any classroom teacher gets, so that's a minimal expense. And we do have an additional transportation cost because we have students that come midday, right? So we have our morning classes and our afternoon classes. So, kind of trying to put some numbers together for tonight, just thinking about, I know what our special education bus costs. And if you divide that into thirds, one of those pieces is sort of that midday run that we already have the bus. It's just we pay a little bit extra because they do that extra run in the middle of the day.
But we would have to do that if they went to Allenstown.
It would be more.
Correct. So in thinking about would our students be able to attend the SAU preschool at a more cost-effective way, I would say no, and I will say why. Because we would, most likely they don't have space to take the number of students that we have. In talking with Jess Bickford, I don't know all the details of that program, but they run at capacity often. So adding our currently identified special education students, and I'm not talking about our typical peers, only our students who are required to attend preschool, would maximize them out. They would have to hire additional teachers in order to support the addition of our students, which would of course increase the overall cost of that program. Yet alone then us having to transport students to that program, I would imagine the cost would increase compared to our current transportation costs. And then as far as related service providers, similarly, they contract for their related service providers or use SAU employees to provide the speech, the occupational therapy. It would not be the case that we could ask our occupational therapist, who is a Deerfield employee, to drive to Allenstown to provide those services. So we are able to utilize our occupational therapist who sees all of the children at DCS preschool through 8th grade. She is a full-time employee. So that's a cost savings there because she is able to meet the needs of the entire school versus having to contract for an occupational therapist, which would be at a much greater hourly rate. And then if we were to send our personnel again, we would be reimbursing them for mileage. But programmatically, I think there's a huge advantage to having our preschool in our building because those kids get acclimated to our school. We become familiar with them as learners. They become our kindergartners. They are with their peer group that they will go on to kindergarten with. They get to come to the library and see Ms. Moxley. So there are a lot of advantages. We have our family connections. Their siblings are here. They see their big brother and big sister in the hallway. So programmatically, I think there are lots of reasons why I would prefer that our preschool remain here. And I do think it's also a fiscally responsible decision because I think by the time we considered adding our populace to the Allenstown, the SAU program, they would have to expand the program, which would drive up their costs as well. If that makes sense.
One question that comes up when this topic comes up is what is required, and correct if I'm wrong, but preschool is not a state requirement for schools to provide.
Well,
Mhm.
yes and
Mhm.
no. So when a student turns the age of 3, if they have been found eligible to receive special education services, they are the responsibility of the district. So on that 3rd birthday or at any time between their 3rd birthday and starting kindergarten, if they are identified as a student needing special education, we are required to provide those services and any related services, speech, OT, physical therapy, whatever that service might be, and transportation to get them here to get those services. So we have a model that is an early childhood model where we also invite typically developing peers to be part of our preschool program because that is the least restrictive environment for our students to participate in. They are in a class with other friends that are there attending our program as well. And so ours is a model that is really a preschool within a school where our students are receiving their special education services.
And the regular students also pay tuition.
They do pay tuition, yeah, and really, I mean,
It's not a lot, but.
right, and many families in our community are able to take advantage of that program and I would suspect that many of those children, Kristen talked earlier about our kindergartners coming to school less prepared for kindergarten. Many of our families, if the option for a typical placement weren't available in a preschool, would probably be kiddos that would just stay at home with families. Like we don't have a lot of families in our preschool program who attend other daycares, different days of the week. So the majority are local families sending kids to a local preschool option. It just happens to be here at school. Sorry.
No. And the one thing with having it here, like you said, our own providers, because I was back in the days of when we didn't have it here. And so you had your OT who had to drive to maybe out of Deerfield. I mean, we were fortunate that we had Mount Delight for many years and that's not far away. But if a child was in Hooksett, because that's where they were, the OT had to drive to Hooksett, provide services, and then drive back. So that time that they're on the road, they couldn't provide services to kids here in school.
And you're talking about Hooksett being in a daycare, but we still can provide
Correct.
services.
Yeah, that's
So,
That's what I
right,
just wanted to
exactly.
be clear
Yeah,
about.
yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
because we are legally obligated, that's a different type of service delivery. It would be like an outreach model
Right.
where, if a student is in a Head Start program in Concord,
Right.
but a Deerfield resident, we would still be
Right.
legally obligated to provide that student with services. And however the district decided to make that work,
Right.
We would have to.
And just to be clear about the SAU preschool, so I was very confused about this the first time I attended an SAU budget meeting. Because if you just look at the SAU budget, it seems very confusing and you're like, why would Deerfield be paying for this? We don't use preschool. We don't pay for it.
Right.
So the cost for the preschool is all contained in one of the funds and then it's divided by the districts who send students there. So if we were to join that preschool, we would then be paying for that fund as well.
Right, our portion based on our student enrollment.
Right.
Correct.
So, it would, a few lines in the budget might go down here, but then our district share would definitely go up.
And I just want to reiterate something that you said. I mean, you talked about all the reasons why it's important to have it here. And one of the big things I think of is a lot of times with special ed kids, social issues can be difficult. So to be with peers that they're then going to go on to kindergarten is wonderful, whereas they wouldn't have that at the big amounts.
And the collaboration amongst the service providers too, being all in the same space.
And they
A
have
lot
it
of work,
again.
happens in the hallways, conversations as one professional speaks to another professional about a student need or whatever it might be. So being all here is helpful, sure.
Okay. Great, thank you so much. Any other areas that people want to talk about? I mean, I know I brought up the building, not building, grounds maintenance. And I know Amber provided some information, and I want to look at it just to make sure that we need the amount that we have put in the operating budget. If the actual spend was so much less, if that makes sense. And that's line 145. So we spent last year 22,395, and the proposed budget is 63,500. I think there was an incident, so I guess I should look at that. Line 145 on packet page 17. It's at the very bottom. Oh yeah, sorry, I'm using the old packet.
Oh,
That's where my highlighting is. I can't do anything different.
the proposed budget is 63.5.
But the actual was only 22.3. So that's a difference of, $40,000. And so I guess I just want to make sure that it's.
And we don't have an answer for that yet, because what she put the line there, say, I didn't say that.
Well, so in this, little memo, yeah. So it just says what the spend was last year.
Last year, right. It's not saying why it's gone up so much.
Yeah, so we'll have to look at the appendix.
We did.
Appendix C in the packet from last time.
Yeah, that's, oh, I see.
November 6th.
Ground maintenance,
What page did that have to look at?
page 26. Okay, so there are several things added.
Okay, yeah. Okay, Health care program, athletic field maintenance, that's pretty big, playground maintenance. Parking lot maintenance.
I can talk to Chris, but likely due to our frozen budget last year, he
Right,
just
that was my
stayed.
question.
Yeah, he
Like-
probably just did the lawn care and that's it.
Right,
Everything else
did
got.
we plan to do these other maintenance
Mm-hmm.
things and he was told no?
Mhm.
Or is it not needed?
Yeah,
I
like the
imagine
athletic
it's
field,
frozen budget related, which
yeah.
is
I
what
mean, the
said
athletic
last
field,
time.
Chris attempted to do it himself, but it was such a huge project, he
Yeah.
could not handle, he just couldn't do it.
Right, because that was post new septic system and
Right.
Mhm.
et cetera.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not questioning
Yep.
Mhm.
the need, but if we aren't going to use it, that would be helpful to know.
You caught the second to last line with the jump from 20,000. Oh, sorry, appendix C. I don't know how Teddy was digging into it, but it looks like that second to last line is pretty up at the top.
You're talking about replacement furniture and fixtures?
Yeah, the furniture.
That was to replace classroom countertops, which he also put into his CIP, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of the board
we want
deciding, do you want that to be in a trust fund or do you want that to be budgeted? But yes, I think Nate, what you're referring to is it was in 2 lines. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I wasn't sure how far we were digging into it.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Seems like that.
Gotcha.
Big jump.
Yeah, but I'm glad you brought that up. I'd
Mhm.
forgotten about that. That is a conversation too for the board, that if you want the countertops on his CIP plan, he had them for 20,000, but we also put them in the budget in.
Yeah,
for
I
next
mean,
year.
I would personally prefer that they go on the CIP plan versus in the budget. Especially, I think the timeline,
Have we looked at all recently of how big what is our current CIP funding amount?
No, they haven't come through the warrant articles yet.
And I thought the CIP was separate from the trust fund.
Yeah, he went over the CIP sheet with us, but then we have the trust fund balances and the warrant articles to figure out where we're gonna.
The capital fee, we collect, we have not money that.
How we
comes
did
to
the gym
school
floor,
district.
talking about the gym floor.
Oh, the
Impact
fees.
fees.
That's what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
thank you, the impact fee, the gym floor fund. Have you looked at that recently, how much is there?
So that reminds me, I meant to email the planning board, because they are in the process of talking about their master plan or whatever it's called. And I think my memory, which is foggy at this point, is that the impact fees are somewhat related to the master plan. Or, right. It's somehow linked. So I think timing wise, it is the case that it will be coming up. The impact fees will be coming up at some point in the next few years. Years, I don't know.
They don't expire for something like 8 years. 10 years.
Okay.
They are accrued and they're collected and I think they're held by the town in some way. And then after, if we're not using them, over 8 years, they go back.
I think it's 6.
6 years.
Because we have the spreadsheet from the town, and I don't know if the town has sent that or updated that, because it had by year what they collected, and then it showed the year that would drop off. And that's why we end up with such a big amount, because we hadn't used any over an extended period of time, we were gonna start losing money.
Right, I was saying, I don't think we've used any
With the building that's been
since.
going on, I suspect there's a fair amount in that fund.
I'll make a note for Amber to reach out if she, I haven't seen any updates from the town on that.
I haven't
so-
found anything. But we haven't used any of them since the gym floor was done. Which predates my joining the board, so at least a few years.
Yeah.
So like, I wonder if some of the like beautification things, like the cove base, if that's what it's called, or like the countertops, like that kind of stuff we could improve with impact fees.
Yeah.
Oh,
So the impact fees need to be used for, the purpose of an impact fee is for the developer to give money to the school because of the impact his development has had on the school. So you have to tie it back to the need for this is because you have more kids because of the development. So it's
and
not,
you can't argue that countertops.
well, you can't
Typical
argue
wear and tear,
beautification.
I see.
Typical wear and tear doesn't matter.
I see.
Like if a counter cabinet is gonna be outdated, no matter if you had the extra kids from development of the street.
In addition,
Or
would be.
Although we did use it for the gym floor, how do you see that?
increased usage wear on the floor. There's more kids, it wears out the floor faster, yes. You just have to have.
Feels a little bit.
You have to tie it back to the impact of having more
I feel like
kids.
And I think they tied it into like the Parks and Rec department
Yeah.
and also having
That's true.
like pickleball, I mean,
Yeah.
right there alone.
We're ruining that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Extra waxing because of that pickleball.
It's not strict, but you do have to
I see.
justify it as the impact of having more.
What about like the cafeteria floor?
Probably.
Just, well, again, the community uses that room
For
too,
dances.
for different things.
Do they still
Bingo.
do, the after school care?
No,
No.
but they do, they use it like
They're,
for dances
They do
and stuff,
dances.
yeah. But even the
fees are
community
small
uses
impact
that,
fees, though.
scouts use that room.
Right. Using that.
Yeah, we could maybe make a case for the cafeteria floor.
Yeah, I don't know, I just think
Okay.
really old countertops is probably.
Okay, I can go with that, but if you can do the gym floor, you should be able to do another floor. More
Okay,
kids
well, it's worth
using that
looking
floor.
into.
Yes, for sure. I made a note to have Amber get the updated.
Yes.
They
think
were
the first-
sending it to us and I haven't seen one.
But I think the first step was to get those projects into the CIP.
Yes,
yes,
So that we
yes.
could use the impact fees to work on it.
Right.
So it does begin with the CIP.
Ties together, yeah.
But should they be in the CIP if we can't actually use impact fees for them?
The CIP is what does
It's
the
still-
Yes, the
facility need,
overall, yeah.
what do we need to do?
Right.
And so some of those things we can use the impact fees
Yeah.
for, some of those things we can't.
But that
We
might-
still need to do
But
this.
that's a good point, we might wanna, when we do it, like, make a note, a star or something, these are things that these impact fee. Already gone through.
Okay. So now the question is, do we want to leave the 20,000 in the budget or take it out?
Take it out.
Do you want to make a motion?
I'll move. I will move to move the 20,000 take it out of this, and then I guess it's a separate motion to put it into the trust fund. But I will
Yeah,
move
we
to-
want
We'll
to
do
this
that
year.
separately. Yeah, let's do that one.
So I'll move to remove the 20,000 from the budget.
Do you wanna, do you know what, line or?
We're going to just talk about.
26, 27, 37. What? Is the account code 26, 27, 37?
I
don't have it, can you just?
Hold on. Are you, is this today's packet?
No.
It's line 145, it's 2630, 424, 108.
She was saying this number.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that
You're removing it from replacement furniture and fixtures. That's all you need for the minutes.
1,000 of that was for the walk-off
Yes, so
mats.
it's just
but
20,000.
It was 20,000, yeah.
Okay.
Did you have a second the motion?
No.
I will second your motion. Any discussion?
I'm sorry, but what line did you say that was in the budget?
It's 142.
Okay, thank you. I'm getting
But,
my-
well,
This is not
I'm looking at a
working.
different budget than you
No,
guys.
it's right. It's
That's
not
why I
very
use
good.
the account
Thank
code.
you.
The same, no matter what.
The proposed budget is 21.5. So you, this is a 20,000 that you might say 21.5.
No, is that for something else?
Right, that's
too?
why I was getting confused. I was
I
like,
it's for the map.
I can't imagine that furniture is
Oh,
in
okay.
ground
Okay,
maintenance,
gotcha.
but.
So replacing exterior mats.
Tonight's budget is line 142.
Yes.
The account code is 2620, 737.
Okay.
And it's for 21.5, but that's
You're
not
only
all
cutting 20,000.
Correct, right, because down here it says the maps.
There's max.
Yeah.
Okay,
I will second him.
I did
Wow.
already.
You guys are off the rails.
Everyone read
It's getting late.
Okay, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Let me see. Does anyone have any other discussion they want to have about rosters, staff, benefits? I mean, we can't really do that much about benefits. Any other discussion that people want to have?
Yeah, I just want to, the numbers, I just want to say like, that, you know, we had a community member who brought up stuff about schools and the numbers of different classes and stuff. And I really didn't get a chance to look at that, and I've done some of the research on that, and I know that some of the schools that are on there have way smaller populations than we do. So I would like a little time to talk about that, and then maybe bring that up next week, is that okay? Yes, all right.
Next week is, we have to.
That's it.
We have to find.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah,
2
next
weeks.
meeting.
Yeah.
But that needs to be the end, like, it's not a time to have I guess we can,
All right, well, I just feel like,
I think have the conversation now.
I
and then-
looked at the data, but I went through the state website and I looked at all schools that had close to populations that we have. And I only found 4 schools that are K through 8 that have populations that are close to us. And out of those 4 schools, there were 2, well, we were one of them, so we were one of 4, so 3 other schools. 2 of them had the 2 art and 2 music, and 2 of them didn't. So I just wanted to.
The issue with waiting is when you get to the next meeting, if you all decide to start cutting staff, it won't be ready for MBC. I'm not saying don't do it, I'm not saying it's not a good idea, but it's just for awareness. Because Amber would have to go back and cut the salaries and the benefits and the fringes all associated with that position, so we would be able to vote on a number that night. Right, that's what you want to do, and you just have to let ABC know that.
I thought somewhere along the way we said something about the PE requirement.
Yes,
Yeah, it's
Requirement
90 minutes,
Because of the.
90 minutes in a week.
and health, there's also health requirement.
And what?
And health.
But health is just for the olders, right? 'Cause I
6, 7, and 8,
understand.
correct. But it was also included in the
Yeah, no, I just,
chart, so.
yeah, no, I tried to look at the chart and make the comparisons and read what other schools did, and it got confusing too. But, so if it's 90 minutes,
No, that 90 minutes can be, doesn't have to, it's equivalent to the whole year. So you can do 30 days of PE and then not have PE for the rest of the year.
But then your block of time for PE for that would be really long.
Yeah, you would have PE every day for like, say, 30 school days. And then the rest of the year, you would go to art for 30 days and then music for 30 days. Or what, divide it
You could have
once.
big gaps of not having it. Some people
Yeah.
divide it by like a third of the year you're
Like the
in.
trimester,
of
this
the year
trimester you have this trimester.
Yes.
And then you wouldn't have it
Mhm.
any other time. It's
Which I imagine would say, like, if we decided music was one trimester, I imagine we couldn't like have band.
You would not have band or
Of course.
chorus.
Right, okay.
You would decimate the entire program.
And the curriculum, we have
I
a
was gonna
very
say,
rigorous curriculum in place that has been approved by the board.
So the only reason that I brought it up at all is because a community member did bring it forward and wanted us to have a discussion about it. And so for me personally, I don't want to see any changes made in what we offer for our IAs and the amount of time we offer them. At least for this coming year, if it's a discussion we want to have, be planning for to have, a year from now or before,
Yeah, I mean, I
but
think,
I don't want to make any, I'm just bringing it up because it was brought up and I figured it has to be addressed.
Yeah.
So for me personally, I don't want to see us make any changes in that. I think what we're providing for our students is appropriate. And again, I don't feel DCS students should have to be taking a step backwards in what they're offered. And even looking at that chart, there's other things that the other schools offer that Deerfield doesn't offer. So yeah, we may have 2 art, 2 PE, 2 music teachers, but then they have foreign language, they have STEM, they have this, they have that. So I'm just putting it out there because it was brought up and.
I mean, those of us that have been around the block for many
Yeah.
years, has arts and performance have been really important to this community.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's always wellness, PE, all of it has been very important, and that's something this community has always supported. And it does absolutely change, and I agree with you. It's not advising them what to do, but I would say that those things have been historically very important. You have an art store in your little town.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, I get that other schools do it. I don't know, it seems crazy to me to not have like PE for 2/3 of the year. Like, I don't, you don't get unlimited recess, you don't get unlimited time to like move your body throughout the week. So I feel like it would be doing such a disservice especially for kids who are more interested in one IA than others, right? Like if my kid only loved music, but I was like, for 2/3 of the year, you actually don't get to do music, I feel like she would be very upset by that.
And there's a lot of research that shows that art and music are really good for the brain, really good for learning. I mean, it's not like they're there by themselves.
It's not just like
There's lots of links to other subjects, yeah. So,
And speaking from experience, my sons went here and they had this situation. Now they're in that situation I was speaking of, and they despise it. They hate their IA schedules.
because
They don't have it. And when they have it, they have art. My one guy loves art. He has it now. He won't have it for 2/3 of the year, and he does not look forward to, like, that's his motivation is art. So you're taking that away from a student.
Again, showing my age of how long I was here, I do remember a period of time where we had art like half the year and then the second half. I think we had PE all year, but we had art like one half of the year and then music the other half of the year. But in order to get the amount of art, you had it like for an hour block or more. And it was like the impact that had on my classroom as far as my instructional time too, to get what they were getting. So, and then we didn't have it for the whole rest of the year. So it was like the kids, we were trying to do art projects related to curriculum, so they still would have those experiences.
Am I correct too? Do the art and music teachers sometimes also try to integrate what they're doing with what the kids are learning in the classroom, right? So it's also just not a separate subject, they're being integrated into the other.
I know, I think last year, maybe we talked about, maybe this is our discussion about teacher ratios, but I think we had a similar discussion during budget season last year of like, if we don't want to make sort of a rash decision in the name of the budget. And I remember in January, I think, or February, we specifically talked about student ratios and I think IAs again, and how the board sort of felt about going forward. And I think it's always a great discussion, and I think it's something we should continually evaluate, but I would caution against making decisions because of, a public comment or, a chart when, we haven't had a full chance to evaluate or decide or hear from other community members about the impact of changing this for their students. It's just in the name of the budget. Anything else? What do people want to talk about? I think, one question that always comes up at the MDC, so this is sort of selfish why I want to have this discussion now. So for those who haven't been to the MDC, I would very much encourage you to come. They're very fun.
Do we have a date for the first time you're gonna look at the school budget? You might have already said this.
Yes. It's
We put them on
the Tuesday after the 4th. Whatever that is.
Okay, so it's the December, so the 10th, okay.
But essentially, the MBC, we give them our budget. We say, this is what the school board has approved. We give them our budget. They can make changes, they can add things, they can take things away. All my role is to represent what the board discussed and what the board wanted to do. So it behooves me to get the board's opinion about things in advance, because otherwise I'm just assuming what the board wants to do. But I know one thing that comes up at the MBC every year is the math specialists, the math interventionists, the reading specialists, the reading interventionists, and I can't ever remember the difference. And I would love to know, how many students they are working with, and sort of what help they're providing, and whether or not, their instruction could be covered otherwise by teachers or, I don't really know much about the program.
Yeah, I would like to say too, that when I was looking at these other schools, I'll type this up somehow to give it to people, but like I looked at Chester Academy, Paul School, Nottingham. I was looking at that too, reading and writing specialists and interventionists, and they all had the same amount we did. So I just thought that was important for people to see. They also, some of them had things that we didn't have, like behavior interventionists. We don't have that. So anyway.
Who I'm a staple gal myself.
Without the degree.
I think upon, you don't know what you don't know, right? And so you think, oh, a reading specialist, they just work with kids on helping them learn how to read. As you can see, I have, it's back-to-back pages of what our reading specialists, our reading interventionists, and our math specialists and our math interventionists do at this building. We are fortunate to have a reading specialist at the K-3 level and a reading interventionist at the K-3 level. During the ESSER grant, we did hire a reading tutor to provide some services. We were never able to hire anyone. The position was available. It wasn't ever filled. We filled it with, at the time, a UNH intern that was working on her degree, and we were able to fit her in for some tutoring sessions. So we were able to spend some of that money, but not a ton. Our reading specialists and reading interventionists, really the job description for both math specialists and reading specialists could be, they both are equally as important in terms of the job description. A lot of the things I changed reading to math and math to reading, so you can see that it's broken up very according to their primary responsibilities: student support, teacher support, curriculum and program development, as well as family and community engagement, and then the key qualities and skills that they provide, that they bring to the table. Our specialists and our interventionists are really our instructional leaders in the building. They are the ones that work directly with the teachers and the staff in the building. They do a lot of the professional development. They support PLCs, which are professional learning communities. They work with the teachers to create the agenda. They go through the agenda with teachers and oftentimes provide professional development during PLCs. They are helping teachers plan for what I need win groups for grades K through 8. And they are, so if we're in a win cycle for math at the K to 3 level, our reading specialists will always take some kids to support for reading. They help with our neediest students as well as our students, that tier 2 level student that maybe isn't necessarily receiving special education services. That our math specialists and our reading specialists are working with them, targeting the skills that they need to have targeted.
So, can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course, go ahead.
One of them, and I'm always getting it wrong, is licensed, right?
They
Or
both,
special.
so reading specialist has a reading specialist certification. Reading interventionist, I believe, does as well.
They're both certified teachers.
Mhm.
You can choose an expertise area or certification, but you can also be a third grade teacher and be a specialist in teaching reading.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think that's why Kristen said there.
Mm-hmm.
Got it, okay.
Math
So they're the
specialist
same
does have a special, is focus on math. Math interventionist, you do not need to have a math certification.
Okay, I
So
knew there was one.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm, mhm.
Math intervention.
Correct.
Okay.
Other thing I remember as a teacher, they didn't always just work with my struggling kids.
Mhm.
They would sometimes take my higher kids.
Correct.
And work on things with them
Mhm.
that maybe I didn't feel qualified to do, and then I would do, it gave them a challenge. It gave my higher kids challenges too, in both reading and in math.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't always the load that they
Mhm,
worked with.
mhm.
It was provided challenges for the other kids too, which they deserve.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But they work with data. They keep the data spreadsheets up. So is there somebody else that could do that work? Sure.
Yeah.
As well as myself, right? Teachers, they take that piece off of a teacher's plate and they enter the data. Teachers also do enter the data, but they, they really keep those data sheets up to date, especially once we've done iReady, we do that 3 times a year. They'll enter all of that data into the spreadsheet, update it from year to year, update folders from year to year. I mean, it's just, the job is, it really is. I don't know what we would do without our reading specialists and our interventionists. I really don't. They're so valuable to the functioning of this school. That.
Which is why every school that Ellen found has
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, both of them.
Got it. Thank you. This is very helpful.
Good.
I will put it in my NBC folder so I can forget this time.
Awesome.
Thank you. What else? What other burning questions or discussion you guys want to have about that budget? Any other motions that people want to make? Okay. Guess we can move on.
Are we saying that we gonna try to have no more, we can, but if we have any motion to change the next meeting, it's going to likely delay.
I think if it's a straightforward cut, it's easier for me to do the math right here. I just would if it's a position, there's lots of other associated costs that I would not know, and it wouldn't be the accurate number.
I think that we would have to be prepared to have an emergency school board meeting.
Yeah, to get the updated number.
Because I honestly don't know that getting the budget to the NBC super late is going to be acceptable. I think we only have 4 meetings or something to review the school budget for the NBC, so.
And I really would like to get it in their hands as quickly as I can after your meeting. So if we came to the next meeting and it was close to being done, then we ship it right off to them to start looking at prior to their meeting on the 10th.
So I would say if people want to make changes to staffing, we will then probably have to do an emergency meeting on Friday. Okay. Lost my agenda. Draft warrant articles.
Yes. So Ashley, a couple of weeks ago, did draft up warrant articles. There's no data in here, it's just what the warrant articles you have, warrant articles you typically look at funding. There's a couple, I think, that are not on the draft. There's 3 of them that aren't even on here. I think she might have used last year's, just as a template. So Amber did update the trust fund balances for you so that you could see what the balances are in all of those. So looking at the warrant articles, and so she's looking at the drive, the warrant articles, she had the special ed trust fund where you, last year you were gonna put some from surplus and raise some from taxation. You have $484,000 in your special ed trust fund now, which I think would cover anything that you would do. So you don't have to make those decisions tonight. Your warrant articles aren't due to the NBC right away, but any conversations and decisions you make now obviously helps move the process along. The next was your school building repair trust fund, and that currently has $386,292 in it. And if you're looking, I don't know if you're looking at the warrant articles too, the draft on the drive, that was number 5. And it has a 0 in it right now, so you put in dollars in everything. You haven't been using the playground trust fund.
Is that school building repair trust fund, is that the one that we could do the HVAC systems and stuff?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So if we were to try to get it up to 750,000.
If you wanted to put in some, surplus money, or you could decide to raise some from taxation. Yes. And then you have a playground fund that we haven't needed. You have $3,200 left in your paving trust fund.
Would that count then when we have to, because I know you have to seal your basement with that?
I would think that the crack sealers and all that stuff would count toward paving.
I would think so.
Yeah, I can't imagine why it wouldn't count toward pavement. You have currently $22,000 in your technology trust fund. If you want to continue to use that as an emergency fund, I think that's fine. If you want to start using it for other things, you can do that.
Like if we were gonna do like replacement cycles.
Yeah.
Instead of putting it in the budget.
Building renovations and site improvement, that was the trust fund that was new to you guys, has $102,000 in it right now.
How's that different than?
I don't remember.
Yes. Yes.
Repairs versus
So,
renovations.
Because I think the thought was, and I'm trying to remember, because Jeff Kelly started this, and I'm trying to remember what he said, but it was more, okay, if we're not going to do the expansion, let's start a trust fund specifically for the things we're gonna work on, because we're not doing this expansion. So they were talking about electrical, and that was gonna be like $100,000, and the things we couldn't get to because we didn't get the addition. And then I already had that other trust fund, but they wanted to distinguish the two.
And I remember in that discussion, we talked a lot about like a STEM lab, which was a building renovation, but not a repair.
Okay.
And like
Yes, it was like making,
That's what I remember.
making renovations to the building because we didn't get a new building.
But
Was
not,
what his focus was on.
but not like countertops is a repair,
Right, that's
not a
like-
renovation.
But some of them are kind of gray.
There are times you can use either one. It's very interchangeable, I would say. Then you have the school addition capital reserve, and that has $149,000 left. And that would be where you would turn if you wanted to get the architects back in here to have more conversation or start thinking about plans. That would be a place you could draw those funds from. Sorry, thank you. And then you have school facilities equipment, and that has $193,000. And it did occur to me today, looking at this, that would be a place if you had money in there, that if your freezer had to be replaced, you would have an equipment trust. Right now has only $193 in it.
Does that include repairs or is it just for new replacements?
It's usually a piece of equipment. It doesn't, I don't know. We'd have to look at the
Because sometimes the
original.
trust is like very specific about
That is correct. You
replacement
have to
or
go,
repair.
you have to go back and look and see if it's specified.
Can we do that? Because I
Yes.
think it might
Yes.
I think it would be worth putting some money in there for equipment.
Yeah, if it didn't specifically say like purchasing new equipment, then there's probably more flexibility. And
Right.
I can look back, we have a grid of when all the trust funds were voted in.
I think that one came along with the kiln, the infamous year of the kiln.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and we didn't have a trust fund to pull that from, so we did use the budget. And I'm pretty sure that's the right one.
Yeah,
Sounds right.
Mm.
That's great timing.
Mm.
I'll look up the original budget.
Which then still leads me to question, is it only purchasing versus repairing?
Mm.
It usually is, but you'd have to look and see if there was a purpose established in the warrant article that was created.
General. Worth looking.
Well, the freezer's being repaired, but that would fit under the school building repairs. It's not considered the building.
There was a lot of conversation around that. This is where my 20 years probably, when we did the septic, not when we just did, one that failed. That was probably 15 years ago. We had a lot of conversation about whether that was part of the building.
And site improvement, I
Yes,
remember.
Yes.
It was
So-
added because the site is different than the building.
It's really, if it's not specified when you create the warrant article, the board has the discretion to make the determination whether they think it's appropriate.
Like the parking lot lights would probably go under the building renovation and site improvement.
It probably is a site improvement, but potentially not a building repair. Okay, maybe Jeff Kelly was onto something. Okay.
But yes, there is a lot of flexibility unless there's something specified in when it's created.
So then if we go back to the warrant articles and we look at them, are we saying the special education trust fund is probably fine right now? There it is.
I personally think it's fine. I don't think we need to add more money to special ed trust
I
fund.
would say it's fine.
Is it more than? Should we cut $100,000 from the
And
budget
you could
and
have
plan
some,
on pulling $100,000 from the trust fund?
yeah, it's still, but you could have something come up at 350,000 and not even be included. 350,000.
In my 9 years, that hasn't happened.
But
I know
But it has happened in other
It-
places.
It
and
did
that's-
happen last year,
Yeah.
we were able to cover.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yes. But
You did.
froze
the budget for the
much.
school for the whole year, so.
But we managed.
We did manage.
We didn't have to go into our emergency fund, we didn't have to go into our special ed fund, because we froze the
We
budget.
froze the budget, we
Which is
got
hard.
nothing.
Define manage.
Yeah.
We have a dead field.
Yeah.
So, anyone?
I would prefer to keep it where it is.
Yeah.
I'd be nervous about taking money.
Yeah, and I feel like we, either last year or the year before, sort of looked around at what other schools had for their special ed. And my recollection was, most schools have between 300,000 and 500,000 in their special ed trust.
I don't think I've ever seen one go over.
Yeah.
That I remember.
So just a question, if we were to remove it from the trust fund, that would have to be an warrant article. The we have to do a warrant?
No, we would have to have a public hearing to expend money from the trust.
And put it into something else.
Well, we would have to
Cover the
present, we would have to say, these are our expenses. This is what we're removing from the trust to pay for those expenses. So we would just be using it for our ordinary expenses.
So it'd be like at the end of the year, the
Yes.
budget's such, we need this money, we're gonna take it out.
Correct.
All right, so that's another reason to keep it.
And so that would be putting nothing for 2 and 3,
Right, so
right? Because
no
they're
water.
both.
Yeah, I mean, this would just be not including them at all.
So 2 or 3, and then the building renovation and site improvement. For the. No, it's
102.
no, that's this one. So what do we have coming up in our capital?
Like,
Well, I think the 750,000 going in this.
yes.
School building repair. No, right, but we haven't done it. So the parking lot lighting would come out of that. If we didn't want to budget for this.
I think.
We did talk about that, like, we didn't have that in the budget, but we did talk about doing that this year.
The lighting.
Right.
Yeah. And you already have trust funds.
Yeah, so.
Right, I would love to do it this year.
So if we plan on doing it this year and taking money out of that trust fund, do we want to put any money back to cover the fact that we've used
Which fund are you talking about?
Building site improvement, the Junk Kelly fund. Is how I will think about that.
And the Zach parking lot.
That's enough for one.
Yes,
Okay.
there were passionate about that.
Zach has texted me multiple times about parking lot lights.
Hmm.
He said, don't forget, like, I have not forgotten, thank you.
It is horrible out there.
It's dark. It's very dark.
So what, like normally, what kind of balance do we like to keep in that site improvement? So if we
That's
took
new.
out 25, oh, it's new.
That's, yeah. It's, I mean, that's why Chris prepares that
We
sheet for you.
established it 2 years ago.
To think ahead about what projects he's looking at, and then you can think about when you wanna do it and back plan. Like, okay, if we wanna get to 750,000 in the next 3 years, do we wanna do $200,000 each year for that? How are you gonna fund it, and what year are you gonna fund it?
But the 750,000 would come from the school building repair?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we can just go down and look at what he has. The, replace the base hallway, that's only 7,000, but that's. And that could just go in the budget too, as an incremental trust fund. Replace windows,
That's huge, that's why he just sort of put that out there, because that is huge.
yeah,
Okay.
and that's 21,000 on there. Oh, no, I see, it's not, I'm looking at the wrong thing, cafeteria floor. So, and that's not till 27, 28. When does he think the windows have to replace it? He give a date?
He just put that out there as something we talked about with the new building, was how bad the windows are, and they're not energy efficient at all.
So that
So
would
it's to
be
put it on your radar, but at least
school building repair.
So no change.
I would say that's the only thing we would need to add money to.
Do we-
Try to get money.
Do we open the windows more because there are more children?
You're not gonna have enough money to get windows, that'll be in back east, trust me.
Hmm.
No, I
know.
It sounds like we would like to, sounds like the sense of the board is that we want to put one together for the building repair expendable trust. For the next couple years at least. I mean,
Yeah.
whether it's for the ventilation or whether it's for the windows, whatever.
Yeah, just to get some money in there, so we keep getting it up a little bit, so we don't affect the
Mm-hmm.
taxes too much.
How much do you want to put?
Question is how much, and then does it come from surplus or do we tax?
Right. So basically, that's the only warrant article we're gonna have, right? I mean, if
Well,
do that-
we also can have non-monetary warrant.
Yeah, okay, we should. okay, that's that.
Those don't have to go to the NBC as early, but we want to get them all.
They're due to the NBC probably by the end of this, by mid-December, I would think. Maybe, they start
But
bothering me about
It's
them.
better,
in
the more
December.
you give them upfront, the better.
But they can't change.
No, they just put their recommendations
on
on.
the monetary.
I'm gonna throw out 150,000.
I would go 2.5 or 3.
I was gonna say, I would like to see it closer to 500.
Well, I don't know if 500 is gonna pass.
No,
No,
the
the
total,
total.
the total.
Get it
So
up to
125?
150. You want to remember that you want to also, you're gonna probably do it the next year, because you want to have enough.
Correct.
Yeah. Try and,
Right.
so if we don't have any other monetary warrant articles, you know, I don't know, just have that one.
Why not go with 250? We're trying to get to 750 in the next 2 years. Why not go 250? I mean, it's not even just 750 because there's gonna be this window situation, so it's gonna be like, you have to get like $1.5 million in there or something. I don't know what the window's gonna be. It's gonna be a lot of money.
Really expensive.
So I would try to make it bigger, but we still want it to pass, and so that's the question, what.
From surplus?
I think from surplus, we have a better chance of getting it to pass.
Yeah. Well, we have that much surplus. But I guess you fund up to whatever you have in surplus.
And if that's your primary concern, you put that first. Well, if it's your only one, it doesn't matter, but you want to rank order them.
All right.
Yeah, I think we've been talking about the building for how many years now? The
Yeah,
community knows we need to work on
work
the
needs to be
building.
Yeah.
They graciously approved $1 million 2 years ago. Now, I mean, I think that they're still, I get the feel, I don't know. If they're gonna vote on the budget, at least I think they've still been approving building improvements projects and trust fund additions. So I would say more like 250 or 300.
I think 250 personally.
You need 250 what?
I think 250 is good.
Out of surplus.
Out of
Yeah,
surplus.
so-
Just take whatever's there or make up the difference in taxation if there's less than.
I think you would have to give an amount, I don't think you can say.
We did that one year where we.
I think you did both, some out of one and some out of the other.
Okay.
I don't think you can say, and if there's any left, put it here.
Last year, we obviously had the high school tuition expense trust fund, which did not pass.
I think that personally, from things I heard after the election, because a comment was made at one of the meetings that people said it didn't pass because the voters wanted tuition paid for through the budget. I think there was a misunderstanding as to what this particular one was. I don't think people looked at it as, it's an emergency fund, just like the special ed one is. It's, okay, we get 6 kids that moved to Deerfield, high school kids that we didn't know about. The money's not in the budget. Where do we pay for it from? So I would like to see us try to put something in that again. I
And
mean,
better explain it.
and hopefully better explain it to people, because I do remember not long after, at a meeting, someone said, that one didn't pass because people want it paid for through the budget. And it's like, well, that wasn't
I
its
think those are
purpose.
pretty common for schools that have
Yeah.
tuition contracts. to do that.
So, yeah, I
I mean,
mean,
we have kids move into DCS, we can absorb them.
Right.
We have kids move in for high school, it's tuition that has to go out the door. Yeah.
I do think, I think last year was a much bigger concern because we didn't know if there was going to be upperclassmen who were moving and
right.
people moving into town for that particular purpose. I would be in favor of doing it. I don't think we need to put as much money as we had planned last year if we're going to do
Do you remember what you put in last year?
it.
Over 100. Yeah. It would be good to get it established.
We were trying to do, like, we
Started.
were thinking like 7 kids. It might have even been more for you.
Right, I think it was 140.
And that's, well, the other thing is if you get a special ed student, that's an addition.
But you could also could
Kept that
use,
from special ed. You got another fund to take care
That's
of.
true, you're right.
So that, I think it's worth trying and just do it from surplus if there happens to be surplus and try to maybe better explain it to the community.
Do
why
we
it's
fund
there.
that before the building or after?
Building first, my opinion. I don't know what others think. They say
So,
build-
if they-
building
if-
in high school.
If we voted yes, but we didn't have any money left, it's still established but not funded? Oh, okay.
It doesn't get established without that.
Yes, unless you had two separate warrant articles.
Oh.
Yeah, when you could maybe do like, I don't know, that confuses people though.
Yeah.
Right. When people get confused, they don't know.
Right.
Right,
Sure.
because you don't know what you're voting for.
I might lean towards a smaller amount just to get it established.
Right.
Right.
20,000 or 25,000 to start, and then,
50.
because last year was the big question, I think,
Yeah.
more than this year. I think we have a little bit. I mean, because currently with the budget, we've rounded up by 3 kids in each school, right? So we still are putting it in the disposable budget until we have this established, then we can maybe not do that, but.
And I think
But I'm
that,
sure established first.
yeah,
So I wouldn't ask for over 100,000.
Yeah.
So if you did 40,000, that's like 2 kids. Almost, not quite.
I was gonna say,
It's a round number.
That's close, yeah.
Yes.
sure.
We've
Yeah, I
done
mean,
the talking.
we'll vote on
Yeah,
the
this
next
is not
one. Yeah,
official,
no,
this is just a
it's-
draft them.
Yeah,
And we want to do it from surplus, or we want to do it?
sir.
I think
don't
surplus has
I
a
think
better
that's the
shot.
So we do it as
surplus.
surplus first, and then the whatever, the 250. Because we do the 250 first, it's a good possibility we won't have 40,000.
I think
I say we do the smaller one first.
Because then it gets established, and then the rest of the money goes into the building. And it's voted down, and it's voted down. The other one will be voted.
Or the remainder goes into the building.
All right, so the high school will be the first one.
I mean, that was just, that's my opinion, but
What does everybody else think?
I will do it that way, and then when you vote on them next time,
we can always
decide,
switch them
you
around.
think about it and have fires remorse. So none in building renovation and site improvement. And none in the others. Technology, addition, equipment. Actual draft goes up.
Is there a need, Kristen, for facilities equipment? Because it's only $193.
You know, that one does make me nervous, like if the freezer goes and it's $100,000, I don't know how much a freezer is, industrial freezer, I have no idea. But it's a lot.
$7,000,
Right.
it's gonna be a lot more.
That was, I put that up, I just thought that.
So should we put something in that one to get some money in there?
Yeah, I don't think there's gonna be surplus to cover all of these
No.
things, so.
But you could, if you did 40,000 for high school, 10,000 for equipment, and then your building. 100,000 on all of it, but even if you've got the majority of the 150 with what was left, right, it'll get funded as much as you have, but.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
We do have a couple of freezers, so, they're like a wash and a dryer. Once one
Yeah,
goes, the next
and
one
they're
goes, so,
old.
yeah. And our fridge has given us trouble too, so we've patched that over the last couple of years. And,
Those are big ticket items.
mhm.
Non-monetary one?
Yeah, do we wanna leap into that discussion?
Do we have a non-monetary one?
I was thinking it might be interesting. You want to go first? I don't know if you have any ideas.
I have lots of ideas, but I'd love to hear from you.
So there's been obviously a lot of conversation around the school, the high school tuition situation. And clearly when I was involved in negotiating and all that, I was in favor of the contract. I'm glad the town has, and our students and our families have school choice now, that's fantastic. But it clearly comes with a cost. And so I still think back to a couple of years and I'm not, yes, the electorate voted the way they did, but now that it's clear what the cost is and the amount of talking on Facebook and wherever else about the cost, is it something is there any sort of regret. If we put it to the voters, and this isn't something that we'd have to do like right now, what would be the sequence of events? If we thought ahead a couple of years, I'm on my way off the board here, so this is for you all to decide how to do this, but we could put a warrant article on the warrant, like we did about 5 or 6 years ago before the end of the concrete contract, to ask something like, if a one school contract would result in the savings of $1 million to the school budget, or however we would word it, would you be in favor of that? It's a whole can of worms.
I have met multiple thoughts about this, but I don't want to be Monday morning quarterbacking the old warrant articles. However, if we're putting something as a warrant article, what I found problematic about the questions the first time is that there was a logical fallacy in one of them, which was, would you support this with no additional cost? And people said yes, but that was not a possibility. So what I wouldn't want is for a bunch of people to vote for something that is not possible to happen.
We didn't have a lawyer on the team last time. So.
Well, it's easy for me to say in retrospect, like this was, like we should have worded this differently.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want to word it such that we're saying it saves $1 million, because it may not. I mean, it could, but
You'd have to negotiate that.
but $1 million for what frame of time? Every single year we're saving $1 million? Probably not. And how would we prove that? So I would want to be very cautious about how we ask the question, because I don't want to be a situation where people are pointing to something saying, see, they voted for this, but it was not a possibility.
When do we have to start talking to the schools? I'm sorry.
No, the contracts were only 3 years,
Right.
so
Yeah.
With an extension.
with an extension. So there's a similar time crunch, but not as extreme, because there is 1 and 2 year extensions built in.
But next year is when we start looking at it again.
Correct. So I think the question is, do we ask? So what I have always been uncomfortable with, which was very evident last year when we had this whole debate about this, was that the voters never voted on the money. They never put it on the money. We signed away what's now $1.2 million
Correct.
over 2 years.
Which we were elected to do.
Right.
That was our responsibility.
Correct, but
And it was the fear of, if you waited for the voters to vote on it in March and it didn't pass, then you have students that
For sure.
have no idea where they're going.
I still think we were justified in doing it.
Oh, yeah.
But I've always been uncomfortable with the fact that it was not voter signed. So do we word it, should we renew these contracts? Or should we word it, should the school board pursue a single longer term contract if there is a cost savings to the town?
You saying have one or the other?
Oh, I don't think you could have both, because again, I don't want it to be like,
Right, no, I'm just.
no,
trying
don't
to-
renew these, but also no single contract.
It's sort of to your prior point, you don't know that it's gonna be a savings, that even
Correct.
if you go with one, like, you're still leading people with, hey, would you like us to go to one school again and we can save you money, but you haven't negotiated anything.
Correct.
So you have no idea, that's a true statement. I'm just
No,
trying to help.
it's true. Which is why I'm somewhat would lean toward, do you want the school board to renew these contracts at the end of whatever year that they're negotiated until?
Who would vote no to that? For what reason would anybody vote no to that?
Cost savings.
But
But
so
you're
you're-
not putting it in a warrant article, so how would they know that?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Like, I think,
You said we don't have to have warrant articles until January?
no, if it's,
The
especially if it's
non-monetary.
non.
No, but I'm
I
just-
wouldn't- Yeah.
Because I think
I
it is
wouldn't rush
something
that
worth
tonight.
thinking about, but I
Yes.
don't think tonight we're gonna come up with the wording of
Well, and
how
I
to.
think it's too soon to put it on the March one this year.
Right.
Because it's only been 1 year.
I was gonna say, theoretically, we don't have to deal with this at all this year.
Right.
But I am mindful of how quickly it comes up and how much people are stressed because they have middle school kids and they don't know what the outcome is gonna be, and it's like incredibly stressful for everybody. And the town just fights about it for years.
I think it should be a priority for you after this budget is done. Because you're gonna need to agree as a board on what you're even, if you're asking anything, and what are you asking? And then whether you're gonna actually start talking to the other schools.
Yeah, what our plan of
Like-
action would be.
Yes. Because you need to be
So
ready
then
and
the
have
following
it
March,
legally
maybe,
reviewed.
yeah, maybe we do have contracts that are somewhat.
Right, like, I mean, ideally, I think you would present actual contracts next March. So that there isn't this like,
Yeah,
Voters
Right.
vote.
so then we know what we're actually voting on.
This month or next?
next
No,
March.
next March.
We could have an inquiry this year and then contracts, either renewals.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, obviously, would be a lot to discuss about renewals. Do we do them for longer term? Because it's not just the board deciding. Do we put them on for 10 years or 5 years or whatever? But
And then-
put those either singular or plural onto the warrant.
And-
Next March. Yes.
And I'm not saying that I'm in favor of it, but I'll throw it out there because it's what we hear from people. There is that option of top-off agreements.
Well, right now, I mean, that top-up agreement is $2,000 a student.
But
Unless you
as
go
the
with,
population
unless you go with
grows,
Pembroke, which is
Take
16,000,
your
but we
lower.
have, what, kids going? I mean, it doesn't.
But
seem-
that's what you can do, is to do it from your
From Pembroke.
lowest school. I mean, that was the whole talk about it when it was gonna be just, when it seemed like it was just gonna be Concord and Co-Brown. It was like you take Concord's tuition, which is lower, and you make people pay the difference.
Yeah,
So if we have 3 schools, because why would you pick the middle school?
No, no.
Because then what are you gonna do for the kids that go to PA? Give them money back?
But people were looking at the contracted rate at Concord. And we kept saying, they won't give us the contracted rate if we don't put all our kids there. So that's where that change happened. If it was the contracted rate, then it would have been different.
But there might be a way to put in continued choice with top-off agreements, because didn't the legislature, even though they always said it was legal, didn't they recently pass legislation to,
I mean, I
Make it
think
okay?
as we could add that as a warrant article next year when we're approving
Right.
contracts.
I think you're not, I think that for this budget,
Yeah.
it's not,
Oh,
you're not gonna make
absolutely.
any headway and we can probably table that.
I mean, I like what Nate's thinking, but maybe not for this year.
I don't know. I think we may have to do an inquiry this year. I don't know.
All right, let's.
I just
think about
I
it.
don't know how we would move on to potentially having contracts for the next year if we don't know what we're pursuing.
That's some kind of.
So think about those, and if you wanna put something forward next meeting, we can certainly do that.
Any other warrant article discussions?
Do you wanna move space needs to the next?
Yeah.
Yep. Informational items. So we can talk about this in more depth at the business meeting on the 4th, because we'll have report outs for high school, the high school committee, but you're welcome to pass out now.
Are those confidential documents?
They're confidential documents.
Okay, so the presentation is what's gonna be talked about and presented or shared at the next
Yes.
meeting. This is
Yes,
just
so-
from-
So I went to the Co-Brown, they have a spring meeting and a fall meeting, and they talk about how everything is. This is Deerfield students, this is confidential because we there's information in here about the kids with IEPs, and the numbers are so low that people could perhaps figure out who they are, and that makes it confidential. So the actual presentation though that they gave us, which was for all the schools, is now on the drive. So people can see that. But I'm just passing this off to you guys.
And I think Jess mentioned that once you have more kids going
Yes.
here,
Yes.
then this will be a public
Right,
document.
once we have
Because it
more,
won't say, oh, you had one kid take the AP exam and the score was this.
Right.
Well, we can't announce that to the entire community. So
Yeah.
I think your numbers are really low right now.
but one good thing that, it's a very small amount of students, this isn't special ed. But with the SAT and the New Hampshire science testing, the Deerfield kids scored higher than the Co-Brown average and the state average in everything. That's pretty cool. Just a few kids. That's good.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, we have circled all the way back to public comments.
And for information, can I just?
Oh, sorry, we're not there yet.
I don't know if this is the proper place to bring it, but I guess I'd like to know about, I mean, a lot of people talk about this that showed up, and just, can you talk a little bit about?
We're talking about it in non-public.
Oh, okay.
And then to the extent we
I'm
want
just
to have a
wondering about
public session,
policy and stuff, okay.
like, we as a board have not been able to discuss it. So we will discuss it in non-public, and if there was anything we want to say after non-public, we can say them.
All right. Thank you.
All right, we are back to public comments.
Question that I have, discussing the parking.
Can you identify?
Oh, sorry, Linda McGrath, 14 Ranger. The discussion on lighting the parking lot. If you have the opportunity for funds available and it's a safety issue, I'm wondering why you have to wait till the summer. It's not a 3-month project to put parking lot lights in my opinion. You could probably do it during a school vacation. Just throwing that out there as an idea. If you have funds available, it doesn't require you to wait till after March to see what you're doing, if it's a safety issue. Or fix it and then ask for additional, funds in your warrant article. If you really need to do it. Just, I'm not one that parking out there right now at night, but that sounds pretty scary, especially when you've got ice involved in the future. The other question I had, and I apologize, I made a daydream a little bit. There's some funds left with the architect, but I don't know if it's specific to the addition, but we have talked about reviewing space needs and the building out there to shed, that's actually a 2-story shed, so it's really not, it's a 2-story building that's used for storage. I went to the building department, I got the plans, there's no information on there. They just did how it's framed, how it's nailed, what kind of plywood there is, the kind of things that you normally put on a building plan and file for a permit, none of that's on the plans I went there. So before an engineer could even review it, they would have to as-build it. I don't know if that's something you could ask out of that architect's fund, or if that's not even something that could be done. But I'm just saying, it would be in my opinion, it would not be good money, but hypothetically, if you've got an architect sitting there on a pool of money, it might be worth money. But I don't know that it's worth it to ask the taxpayers to come up with money right now, personally. But that's just my opinion. I was hoping to see right on the plans that it said this building was designed for storage, this is the load it was designed for, none of that information was there. It was just, it's a building that looks like this and it has doors going up. It's really, really bare bones. Which is a bit surprising to me, but maybe shouldn't have been surprised. And I guess I felt like I had another thing, but the lights became a safety issue. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, I gave it very much.
Jacqueline Turner, Kennedy Road. Thanks everybody for being here. I just have a small public comment, and that is around the busing line item. And I just wanted to point out, because I feel like heard somebody mention it in public comment, and we've referred to it, we've referred to it on the board, that the budget last year didn't pass because the third bus wasn't in it. We don't know that. I just want to have everybody remember that. Like that is an assumption that people make, but we didn't poll the voters. Like we don't actually know that. It could have also been just as likely that people were voting no down the list. And I'm not saying I'm for or against more buses. Like, of course, I think more buses would be amazing for our students, both in high school and in DCS. But I just wanted to say that out loud, that we can make assumptions all we want, but we really don't know for sure, which is why things like advisory warrant articles are great. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
Gigi Cooper, 19 Kennedy Road. First of all, I just wanted to apologize to the board for my impassioned speech prior. I've been cared deeply, obviously, about the town and the school, and been holding a lot of grief, and I guess more than I knew. So my apologies. I do hope we, as a community, all of us come together more in a spirit of collaboration and cooperation to work with you. It seems oftentimes as there's a spirit of working against, and I know how that can feel. So I'm hoping if there's anything I can do that fosters that, I will. You're our friends, you're our neighbors, you're our children's former teachers, and somehow I think we've gotten to a state of affairs where we've just forgotten the humanity in the volunteer roles that you have put yourselves in as our elected officials. I also worry about the teachers, and I talk to the administration, but if there's anything the board can do as well, because I think the types of remarks sometimes that circulate on social media, particularly things like about grooming, are just so inflammatory. I can't imagine how the teachers must feel when those types of things come up. I know that those statements just can be so harmful, types of statements. I picked that particular one, and I hope if there's anything that you can do to try to shield or support the teachers or do something, because I know they probably then take on that, feel like they're working under duress. It takes away their creativity, it takes away their enthusiasm, and I would hate to see that, because I know for so long the school has just been like a beacon of our community, and I hope that whatever we can do to help you shield the teachers or support them will happen. And then the last thing, I wanted to publicly apologize if I made anyone in the audience and with my prior statements feel targeted. So thank you.
Thank you.
Bobby Andossi, Brown Road. I hope that you do. I'm going to reiterate a little bit of what I said. I feel like nobody listens to anything anybody says anymore. If people would read original posts or read, I'm not speaking for other people. I'm saying for me in particular, the email, obviously take out names, but all it says is please review your policies to make sure that this doesn't occur again. There's no grooming quotes, there's no lynching. Like, obviously people are gonna talk and say what they want, but there are parents that just care about the kids and just wanna help you do your job. So that's why when I spoke before, I did say, other paras take care of this in classrooms. I feel like some people attack people that are trying to help. Anyway, I also feel like the board, you are all have your right to your opinions, obviously. A particular board member continues to say they don't want DCS money to go to high school, but you're the school board for Deerfield, not just DCS. So when the town votes and a majority votes to say, yes, we want high school choice, they're voting to use their money to do that. So I think that past opinions, you might need to look at how much work that your high school, you had a high school committee. They did an amazing job. They worked they worked so much to get that done in the amount of time they did, and I give them props for doing all the work they did. Moving forward, your town already voted for high school choice, and you just started giving it to the kids, and you do see that a majority of the 8th graders are choosing a school that they didn't have before. So I just want to make sure that you're not setting yourself up for riotous chaos. Like, if you were to remove that, although you're going to put it to vote, but I just seeing the backlash that everybody's getting these days, just careful what you're saying. They're gonna yell at you anyway, but I'm just saying that we already voted for high school choice. To try to remove it might cause a lot of conflict in the community. So thank you for all your time.
Thank you.
Oh, and those, I don't want those ending up back in that classroom. Like, do you want them? Okay.
Other public comments?
Oh, man.
You don't have to tell me.
I know, yeah, I'm not really prepared.
There might be anybody else
over there to support educators. Just sit and say your face. No, I'm just sitting.
Oh, we wanted you to talk.
I'm not ready. I'm sorry.
I think
That
we're-
took a long time.
Oh, I think we're over.
Okay. They just
Yeah.
said any other public comments.
Yeah,
So
any
if you
other-
want to sit at the table, you can say something. You're
You're
allowed to.
welcome, and welcome to the meeting. Would you like to make a comment?
Just so.
Hey, yeah.
Yeah, I'm Julia Sunderland. Sorry, I hustled. And I just wanted to voice my support for the educators in Deerfield. I'm very grateful. My son just started here a couple weeks ago. I'm just really grateful for the teachers and their support, and I hope that that we can continue to have a supportful community that's able to help our kids and not let weird politics get in the way, because our kids don't deserve that. I love this town. I moved here intentionally. We selected Deerfield long before having kids, and I am familiar with the school because my sister works here. So I have attended school functions prior to even having kids, but knowing that someday my kids would go here and would hopefully be able to put on a play and have that weird emotional woman in the audience start crying at some kids singing in the middle of it. And I think that I am optimistic that both of my children will have very successful school careers here, time here. And I am grateful for the people that I've got to meet, but I've had the opportunity to meet within the school, and I hope to keep the good teachers that we have and continue to grow the programs that we have.
Thank you so much. Any other public comments? Okay.
Yeah. My name's Bob Davitt, 44 Old Center Road. And a long time ago, I was also a teacher. I taught 7th and 8th grade science, 9th grade health, and 10th grade biology. And I was also responsible for sex education in those grades. And I've always said that I think everyone at some point in their life, probably after they graduate from school, should have to teach for 1 year to see what it's like. Because I've taught during my years of teaching, it required more nervous energy than any other job I've ever done. And I mean, everyone thinks you have vacations. You sleep half the vacation, try to recover from the school situation. We used to have an adult teacher in the boys' bathroom. Otherwise, at lunchtime, fights would break out if they weren't there. And teachers make mistakes. I made mistakes. In those days, I was teaching in Indianapolis, Indiana. They used to send films in the mail that were free, and some of them were good. I was teaching a section on genetics, and one of them was about genetics. Mendel, he discovered that certain genes are dominant and some are recessive. He used pea plants to discover this. And the oil companies used to send these films, they were free. There was no internet, okay? And I was showing this film, I didn't preview it, and near the end, they showed statuettes of humans in different sexual positions. And of course, I should have previewed the film. I didn't. The principal, of course, said you should preview it, and I didn't. He kind of laughed. And I had, there were people that were upset, and I apologized. And I had a choice when the film was going. Do I turn it off or do we just finish it? I decided to finish it because I did teach sexual education too. And I thought it would be inappropriate to just turn it off. And so people make mistakes, and we all need to understand that. Things aren't done on purpose, and you learn from your mistakes. So I have kudos for all the teaching and teachers here and everywhere. And thanks for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Last call. All right. I will make a motion to go into non-public session pursuant to NHRSA 91-A:3, Section 2, small letters A and C.
Second.
Yeah, if anybody's a potty break, you can.
Yes.
I got it.
Yeah.